Chapter 1620. Along the way, Ghost chattered on and on, asking Lu Yi about his mood from time to time. Lu Yi was annoyed by her questions and said that he was in a bad mood. Ghost felt helpless and regretful. If she had known this would happen, she wouldn't have thought about revenge. Now that she had offended this guy, she didn't know if she would have the chance to go to the merfolk's territory again. But on second thought, she thought of something and glanced at Lu Yi smugly. Since that's the case, let's part ways here. We won't see each other again. As he said this, he actually left in a straightforward manner. Lu Yi turned to look in the direction she left, secretly surprised. He thought that Ghost was deliberately mystifying things, but she really left just like that. Ignoring her for now, Lu Yi continued to rush in the direction of the Che Ling realm. A few days later, he finally arrived at the outskirts of the Che Ling realm. He had been here once before, when he first met Chu Shen. Chu Shen, who had run away from home, was captured by him and sent here. He even received a reward of 100,000 spirit jades. But he didn't enter the Che Ling realm that time, because Yu Yao had personally come out to take Chu Shen. So he didn't know what the situation was like inside the Che Ling realm. Judging from the outside, the Che Ling realm wasn't very big, much smaller than the 9 states. But the strength of a realm's foundation had nothing to do with its size. The Che Ling realm was able to produce sunshine like Jiao Yan. Even with the convenience of the Wanxiang galaxy, it was still a well-known large-scale realm. However, it shouldn't be a top-level realm. As far as Lu Yi knew, the Wanxiang galaxy didn't have any top-level realms. The reason why there were so many sunshine here was because of the galaxy's uniqueness. The resources cultivators from other galaxies could only be self-sufficient in their own galaxy. Even if they interacted with other galaxies, it was difficult for them to have frequent large-scale transactions. But the Wanxiang galaxy was different. It could be said that it was the most prosperous galaxy in the universe. With top-level spiritual islands like the Wanxiang Chamber of Commerce and the Wanxiang Island, the cultivators of this galaxy didn't have to worry about the resources they needed for cultivation. The Che Ling realm also wasn't like the other large-scale realms that Lu Yi knew. There were no signs of cultivators guarding the periphery. This made it so that Lu Yi didn't know what to do when he came here. He could enter directly, but entering without an invitation wasn't appropriate. Therefore, he could only send a message to Chu Shen first. This time, he managed to contact Chu Shen. Chu Shen replied quickly, "Big brother, you're back? Wait a moment, I'll come out to pick you up." Lu Yi waited quietly outside. Not long after, an aura rapidly approached them from within the realm. Lu Yi revealed a puzzled expression because he could sense that this aura did not belong to Chu Shen. This person seemed to be Yu Yao. Furthermore, from the fluctuations of her power, she was no ordinary Yu Yao. Sure enough, after a short moment, a graceful figure appeared in his field of vision. It was a young woman in a snow-white palace dress. Her beautiful hair was coiled into a bun and casually strung up with a jade hairpin to reveal her slender and white neck. Lu Yi realized that he had seen this woman before. She was Yu Yao, the woman who had taken Chu Shen from him previously. She was the one who had given him 100,000 spirit jades. Lu Yi remembered that Chu Shen called her Aunt Yu, but she didn't know how to address her. Li Taibai greets fellow Taoist. Lu Yi bowed and stated the purpose of his visit. "I'm here to look for junior brother Chu Shen Chu." He was somewhat puzzled. Chu Shen had clearly said that he would come out to pick him up. Why was Aunt Yu the one who had come instead? Aunt Yu's eyes were as clear as water as she sized Lu Yi up. She naturally recognized Lu Yi at a glance, but she couldn't see anything special about him. This was because according to the limited information she had obtained, this Li Taibai should be the Fa Wuzuan who had made a name for himself in the Constellation Hall before disappearing without a trace. The twin chi-connected formation disk that was frequently used on the 10,000 creations C was created by this person. Logically speaking, such a person should have an extraordinary background. However, up until now, the Che Ling realm had not been able to find out anything about him. He seemed to have no connections with any of the known top forces. Moreover, if he really did come from a top force, he definitely wouldn't sell the twin chi-connected formation disk. Such a thing would only be treasured by the force he belonged to. After looking at him for a while, Aunt Yu asked meaningfully, "Are you really called Li Tai Bai?" Lu Yi was slightly surprised. He thought to himself, "I haven't even made a name for myself on the 10,000 creations sea yet. How did the Che Ling realm know about me?" However, he didn't know that Aunt Yu only knew about his other identity. Fortunately, Aunt Yu didn't intend to probe further. She said casually and turned around, "Come with me." Lu Yi wanted to ask Chu Shen, but on second thought, it was probably Chu Shen who asked Aunt Yu to pick him up, so he decisively followed her. Although the Che Ling realm was not big, it was a place full of spiritual energy. Moreover, this realm had been promoted to a large realm for many years. Although it had not been promoted to a top realm, it was not far away. It was many times stronger than the current 9 regions. The entire realm was filled with extremely pure and rich spiritual energy. Cultivators who cultivated in such an environment would save many years of hard work. In the center of the entire Che Ling realm, there was a huge basin terrain. Looking down from the sky, it was as if there was a pit in the ground. The pit was like spring all year round, and colorful flowers were competing to be beautiful. This hidden flower valley was the center of the Che Ling realm. The flowers and plants in the valley were not ordinary things. They were all extremely precious medicinal materials. Aunt Yu led Lu Yi and didn't say a word along the way. Lu Yi was not familiar with others, so he didn't speak much, so he just looked around casually. The number of cultivators in the entire Che Ling realm didn't seem to be many, because Lu Yi didn't see many cultivators. However, any cultivator he met was extremely strong. Following Aunt Yu to the hidden flower valley, Lu Ye's gaze was quickly attracted by a position. Over there, in a colorful field, a small figure stood there with open arms, facing the sun, closed eyes, and took a deep breath with an intoxicated expression. It should be a girl who looked only in her early teens. Her hair was braided, and her skin was wheat-colored. She looked very healthy and lively. In a peaceful environment, the intoxicated figure with closed eyes and the colorful flowers set off. This scene was like a painting. Looking at her again, Lu Yi showed a puzzled look, because the face of this little girl gave him a subtle sense of familiarity, as if he had seen her somewhere before. Lu Yi was puzzled. If he had seen a little girl of this age before, he should have an impression of her, but he couldn't think of where he had seen her. Before he could look any further, Aunt Yu led him in a certain direction. In front of him was a simple hall. Aunt Yu said, "Go in." Lu Yi nodded, "Thank you." As he spoke, he strode into the hall and swept the surroundings with his gaze. To his astonishment, he noticed that the hall was completely empty, and there wasn't even the slightest shadow of a person. He thought Chu Shen would be waiting for him here. However, since he was already here, he might as well take things as they came. He stepped into the hall, found a chair, and sat down. He took out a sound talisman and sent a message to Chu Shen. Strangely, although the message was sent out, Chu Shen didn't respond. Just as he was about to try to contact Tang Jun, the door to the hall suddenly closed with a bang. Lu Yi was startled and shot to his feet, looking around vigilantly. Using his divine sense, he didn't detect anything unusual, but the door to the hall had suddenly closed. Obviously, something was wrong. He faintly felt that something was wrong, but on second thought, if the Che Ling boundary really wanted to harm him, there was no reason for them to go through so much trouble. Aunt Yu alone was not someone he could contend with. Moreover, it was strange that Chu Shen didn't respond when he contacted him. When he was outside the Che Ling boundary, Chu Shen had clearly said that he would come to pick him up. But in the end, Chu Shen didn't show up, and the one who came to pick him up was Yu Yao. He couldn't say that Chu Shen wanted to harm him and had someone lure him in, could he? Just as he was feeling suspicious, a trace of darkness suddenly flowed out of the hall. The darkness was like flowing water, flowing in from all directions. Lu Yi didn't know what this darkness was, but he knew that he couldn't let it touch him. His body flashed as he rushed towards the door. When he got close, he unsheathed his long saber and chopped down. However, a curtain of light suddenly lit up in front of him, easily blocking his saber. This hall was covered in a spirit array, and the strength of this spirit array was not something he could break. What was going on? Lu Yi had no idea what was going on. The darkness was thick and quickly eroded. The hall was only so big. Lu Yi hid here and there, but in the end, there was no place to hide. He could only calm his mind and prepare to be enveloped by the darkness. In the next instant, the darkness swallowed his figure. Lu Yi only felt his body suddenly sink, as if there was a mountain on his back, pressing down on him until his waist was a little bent. He hurriedly urged the power of the talent tree, but the talent tree didn't respond. Only then did he understand that although the darkness had a strange power, it didn't invade his body, so the talent tree didn't react. It was very uncomfortable and his bones creaked. But this huge pressure was still within the range that Lu Yi could endure, and it wasn't enough to crush him. Struggling to hold on, he took out the sound talisman again and tried to contact Chu Xin or Tang Jun, but he found that he couldn't even send a message. He really couldn't understand why. The only thing he was sure of was that someone was secretly attacking him. And to be able to do this, it was either Ri Zhao or Yu Yao like Aunt Yu. It was most likely Aunt Yu, Lu Yi thought to himself. Outside the grand hall, Aunt Yu, who had brought Lu Yi here, was quietly watching. Although she couldn't see what was happening inside, she could still tell what was happening inside. She was a bit curious. Just what had this Li Taibai done to make the world master personally punish him? Chapter 1621. Outside the main hall, Aunt Yu waited for a while before preparing to leave. She was only responsible for bringing Lu Yi here, and there was nothing else for her to do. As for why the realm master wanted to punish the people in the hall personally, she guessed that it had something to do with Chu Xin. Due to the incident at Wushuang Island, Chu Xin had a huge conflict with her. The realm master had nowhere to vent her anger, so she could only trouble Li Taibai. A small figure suddenly ran over from afar. It was the little girl who was standing among the flowers. She came in front of Aunt Yu and said crisply, "Master." Aunt Yu nodded. "Come with me. I haven't tested your cultivation in a while. Let's see if you've been slacking off recently." The little girl said seriously, "No, I haven't. I've strictly completed what Master asked me to do." Aunt Yu smiled and didn't say anything else. She used her mana to wrap the little girl up and flew up into the sky. On the other side, in a bedroom, Chu Xin scratched his ears and cheeks, looking absent-minded. There was a person sitting in front of him, graceful and elegant. It was the realm master of this realm, and also the only sunshine in the Che-Ling realm, Jiao Yan. Jiao Yan was also testing Chu Xin's cultivation. As she asked and answered questions, time passed slowly. After a while, Chu Xin couldn't take it anymore. "Mother, my friend is here. I have to go fetch him." He was quite helpless because when he received Lu Ye's message and was about to go pick up someone, his mother also sent him a message. As a result, when he came here, his mother actually wanted to test him on the results of his recent cultivation. If it was any other time, he would just test it. He was quite satisfied with his recent cultivation results and was confident that he wouldn't disappoint his mother. However, now wasn't the time. Jiao Yan heard and said, "Don't worry, I've already asked your Aunt Yu to fetch your friend. He's in the Jingxin Hall now. Once I'm done with the test, you can go and see him." When Chu Xin heard that his mother had arranged everything, he didn't say anything else and answered Jiao Yan's questions seriously. Between the questions and answers, Jiao Yan's expression gradually became gratified. "My son has grown up." In the past, although Chu Xin was talented, he couldn't settle down. Especially after he was promoted to a constellation, he always thought of ways to go out. However, after the previous incident, Chu Xin obviously grew up a lot. Recently, he didn't talk about going out. Even without her orders, Chu Xin was working on his cultivation. Of course, she knew the reason. Chu Xin didn't know the importance of strength in the past. He only thought that he could live freely as long as he had sunshine as his mother. But now that he deeply understood the importance of strength, he naturally couldn't wait to become stronger. Looking at it this way, although the previous incident was a blow to Chu Xin, it was actually a good thing in the long run. But, to balance, Chu Xin said seriously, "I will remember. Mother, don't worry. I know what to do and what not to do." Jiao Yan nodded in satisfaction. "Since that's the case, you may go." Chu Xin bowed and turned to leave. He had been delayed here for almost 2 hours. Big Brother must be anxious from waiting. When he saw him later, He had to apologize to him. Moreover, he had to explain the matter of the Peerless Island to Big Brother clearly. Shen. Jiao Yan's voice suddenly came from behind. Chu Shen stopped and turned to look back. Mother, do you have any other instructions? Jiao Yan hesitated for a moment before asking, what do you think of this friend of yours? Chu Shen didn't answer directly. Instead, he thought carefully for a moment before saying, although we haven't known each other for a long time and haven't interacted much, I feel that Senior Brother Li is a person with a bright future. As for his temperament, I can't say that he's pure, but he has morals. He paused for a moment before saying, Mother, although I don't have much experience, I can still distinguish between people I can befriend and people I need to keep a respectful distance from. He obviously misunderstood that Jiao Yan was afraid that he wouldn't be careful with his friends. Jiao Yan nodded slightly. A person with morals can indeed be befriended. You can go. Chu Shen hurriedly left Jiao Yan's side and finally arrived at Righteous Heart Hall. He looked around curiously because he found that the door to Righteous Heart Hall was closed. He didn't understand. Since Aunt Yu had arranged for Big Brother to stay here, why did she close the door? He didn't think too much about it. He took a few steps forward and pushed the door open. When he looked inside, he was stunned. Lu Ye's face was pale and he was sweating profusely. He was standing there with his back hunched. When their eyes met, Chu Shen saw a trace of confusion in Lu Ye's eyes. Lu Yi was indeed a little confused. While he was waiting for Chu Shen, the entire hall was pitch black. More importantly, he was carrying a huge pressure on his body that made it impossible for him to move. The person who had secretly attacked him had controlled his strength perfectly. It was the kind of strength that could make him feel great pressure without causing him any harm. At first, he thought that it was Aunt Yu who had secretly attacked him, but after thinking about it carefully, he felt that something was wrong. Even if Aunt Yu was at the late stage of Yu Yao, her strength couldn't be so exquisite. If it wasn't Aunt Yu, Lu Yi didn't dare to think about it. But what? Could it be that she was warning him to stay away from Chu Shen in the future? Because of the matter on Peerless Island, she felt that he had implicated Chu Shen? If that was the case, she could have just shown up and said a few words. There was no need to torment him like this. This was clearly just a small punishment. When Chu Shen opened the door, the boundless darkness that surrounded him quickly melted away like snowflakes under the blazing sun. Not even a trace of it remained. Chu Shen obviously didn't notice anything strange. Big Brother. Chu Shen was shocked and quickly went forward to support Lu Yi. What's wrong with you? He really couldn't understand. Big Brother was just waiting for him here. How did he end up like this? It was as if he had fought a strong enemy. Lu Yi glanced at him and didn't even have the strength to speak. He felt extremely empty, as if he had been hollowed out. With Chu Shen's help, he sat down beside Chu Shen. Chu Shen hurriedly took out a few top-grade spirit pills and fed them to Lu Yi before standing to the side and waiting anxiously. Lu Yi didn't know what kind of pills Chu Shen had fed him, but from their effects, he could tell they were all top-grade spirit pills. After an incense stick's worth of time, Lu Yi barely recovered. Although his body was still a little empty, his complexion was rosy. Chu Shen asked again, Big Brother, what happened? Lu Yi glanced at him and saw that his concerned expression wasn't fake, shaking his head. When I was waiting for you, I was bored and tried to comprehend a secret technique. However, I made a mistake and suffered some backlash. He couldn't tell him the truth. If that person really had any complaints about his dealings with Chu Shen, she might be monitoring this place right now. Chu Shen didn't know whether to laugh or cry and asked with concern, Are you feeling better now? It's nothing serious. Only then did Chu Shen relax. Suddenly, he cupped his fists towards Lu Yi and bowed down. His voice was heavy as he said, Big Brother, little brother has let you down. Lu Yi narrowed his eyes slightly. What do you mean? Chu Shen's voice was sorrowful. In the years that Big Brother was not here, lost the matchless island. Lu Yi had thought Chu Shen had done something wrong, but it turned out to be this. He raised his hand and helped Chu Shen up. Your fists aren't as big as others, there's no need to blame yourself. Even if I was here, I wouldn't have been of any use. What should be lost would have been lost. But Unique Island is still Big Brother's place. Chu Shen said with a guilty expression. If Lu Yi hadn't agreed to let him stay on Unique Island with a few women, how could things have turned out like this? In Chu Shen's opinion, Unique Island would only have one master, Li Taibai. He was just a steward on the surface. Lu Yi shook his head. Unique Island isn't just mine, half of it is yours. If it weren't for Chu Shen's hard work over the years, Unique Island wouldn't be as prosperous as it was now. Even if Lu Yi could turn Unique Island into a spiritual island with the help of the minor constellation hall, the most likely result would be various forces fighting over it. It was precisely because of Chu Shen's background that he was able to smoothly form a cooperative relationship with various forces, allowing Unique Island to rise in a short period of time. Tell me in detail. Lu Yi gestured for Chu Shen to sit down and talk. I just returned to the Wanxiang Sea not long ago, so I don't know what happened to Unique Island. I only know that it has changed its name to Sky Spill Island. This Sky Spill, is it your Wanxiang Galaxy's Tianyan? Chu Shen's expression darkened. Yes, it is our galaxy's Sky Spill. You can guard against anything, but you can't guard against a thief in your own home. I never thought that Unique Island would be stolen by my own family. Chu Shen narrated the events of Unique Island. At the end of the day, there was a saying that a man's wealth was his own ruin. If Unique Island was merely a high-class spiritual island, it wouldn't be a big deal, and the situation could still be maintained. However, the minor constellation hall under Unique Island continued to play its role. Just a year ago, Unique Island, which had already been promoted to a high-class spiritual island, actually showed signs of transforming into a top-class spiritual island. Outsiders could only guess, as there was no way to prove it. However, Chu Shen knew that Unique Island was really transforming into a top-class spiritual island. This was because he discovered traces of a spiritual jade mine in a place that was not open to outsiders. This was a sign that only a top-class spiritual island would have. Chu Shen immediately knew that this was a serious matter. There weren't many top-class spiritual islands in the entire Wanxiang Sea, and they were all occupied by the top forces. Although he had Jiao Yen as his backer, Unique Island's overall strength was on the low side. It was only because it had countless connections with various forces that it was able to maintain peace. However, once news of the spiritual jade mine spread, who knew what kind of storm it would cause? Chapter 1622. Since ancient times, there had been cases of deserted islands reviving and spiritual islands dying in the Vientiane Sea. However, for those spiritual islands that were revived for unknown reasons, they were at most promoted to a high-class spiritual island. Furthermore, there were only a handful of such cases. There had never been a case of a deserted island being promoted to a top-class spiritual island after being revived. This was the first time in history that Matchless Island had become a top-class spiritual island. There were only a handful of top-class spiritual islands in the entire Wanxiang Sea. When the news spread, which force would not be tempted? One should know that a top-tier spiritual island was equivalent to a top-tier realm. Both of them could produce spiritual jade mineral veins. The only difference was the quantity. A top-tier realm might have more than one spiritual jade mineral vein, but a top-tier spiritual island only had one spiritual jade mineral vein. Even so, many people were tempted to take action. Everyone knew that Matchless Island was not very powerful on the surface. However, due to Chu Shen's background, it was not easy for the external forces that coveted Matchless Island to make a move. It was not easy for the external forces to make a move, but the local forces had less to worry about. In fact, when the unparalleled island had been promoted to a high-class spirit island, many local forces had wanted to get a piece of the pie from Chu Shen. This was because, on the surface, Chu Shen only had Jiao Yen as his backer. However, at the end of the day, Chu Shen was a cultivator from the Wanxiang Galaxy. Behind him stood the entire galaxy's sunshine. Those Rizhao did not care about small profits. However, when the profits were huge enough, they could not help but be tempted. They were willing to let Chu Shen use them as his backer. Naturally, they had the right to get some benefits from Chu Shen. Therefore, some people wanted to arrange for some people to enter Matchless Island. Those people included not only Xingxiu but also Yu Yao. They said that Matchless Island should have the ability to protect itself now that it had grown. However, in reality, They wanted to use this method to achieve their goal of controlling Matchless Island. If Peerless Island really belonged to Chu Shen alone, perhaps he would have agreed. He was not an unreasonable person. He also knew that he had unknowingly borrowed the prestige of the many sunshine in the galaxy, so it was understandable for him to share some of the benefits. However, Matchless Island did not belong to him alone. Moreover, he knew that Lu Yi would bring a group of people with him when he returned to his homeland. When the time came, those people would definitely be arranged to stay on Matchless Island. Naturally, this would strengthen Matchless Island's ability to protect itself. If he arranged for enough people now, what would happen to the people Lu Yi brought with him when he returned? He would not be able to answer to his big brother then. Therefore, Chu Shen could only refuse. Although this made many of them unhappy, they couldn't really make things difficult for a junior because of Jiao Yan's reputation. Until the news that Matchless Island had become a top-class spiritual island spread. Nikidoresu could no longer sit still. Although the Vientiane Sea was in the Vientiane Galaxy, the galaxy had only ever controlled one top-grade spiritual island, the Vientiane Island. It wasn't that the Wanxiang Galaxy didn't want to get more top-grade spirit islands. It was just that the other forces that occupied the top-grade spirit islands all had powerful backgrounds. Now that he finally had the chance to occupy the second top-grade spiritual island, how could he miss it? Some things could not be stopped just because Jiao Yan disagreed. Jiao Yan was only one person. She could not represent the entire galaxy. Hence, it was decided that Ri Zhao would take back Matchless Island and make it part of the Wanxiang Galaxy. After that, cultivators from the Wanxiang star system came to Chu Shen. They tried to reason with him. Chu Shen did not reject them. Instead, he pretended to be polite. He wanted to drag it out until Lu Yi returned. Even if he had to lose Matchless Island, he could not let it fall into his hands. However, those who coveted Matchless Island gradually lost their patience. Seeing that Chu Shen was not sincere, they could only threaten him with force. Anyway, on the Wanxiang Sea, attacking spiritual islands was a common occurrence. It was not rare. The attack and defense of a spiritual island began. Unfortunately, Matchless Island was too weak. Even though Lu Yi had spent a lot of money to set up a defensive array, it could not stop the enemy. With Matchless Island's strength, many forces could take it down. However, no one dared to do so. It was a slap in the face to the Wanxiang Galaxy. Who would want to make a living here in the future? However, if they took over the Wanxiang Galaxy, it would not be a problem. Matchless Island is lost just like that. The profits from these few years are also gone. Chu Shen's expression was gloomy. The battle that day was not too intense. Chu Shen did not suffer any attacks. He was only captured alive by Yu Yao. Most of the cultivators recruited by Matchless Island knew the truth of the battle. In fact, they did not resist. Only one person resisted fiercely. That person was Tang Jun. Old Tang knew that Matchless Island was a foothold for the Jade Conch Galaxy cultivators. If Matchless Island was lost, even if the Jade Conch Galaxy cultivators came, they would not have a good future. Therefore, he fought with his life in that battle. He did not care about his own life. He was not fighting for his own pride. He was fighting for the future of the three realms. I've never seen Elder Tang like that. Chu Shen sighed. All along, Elder Tang had always given him the impression that he was an amiable person. Usually, he would drink and make merry on Matchless Island, living a carefree life like a rich man. Who would have thought that at the most critical moment on Matchless Island, this old man who usually did nothing would fight the fiercest? Unfortunately, he was not strong enough. Several of his magic treasures were broken. He was also seriously injured. The enemy would not make things difficult for Chu Shen. However, why would they care about an old Yu Yao like Tang Jun who did not have a strong background? Many people died on the Wanxiang Sea every year. It did not matter if Tang Jun was there or not. Especially when Tang Jun looked like he was going to fight with his life. It aroused the enemy's killing intent. Under Tang Jun's influence, Little Dumb, Crooked Tooth, and the others who followed Chu Shen earlier were also fighting with their lives. In the end, it was Chu Shen who spoke up and saved their lives. Of course, it was not without a price. The profits of Matchless Island in recent years were the money for these people's lives. How much? Lu Yi asked. Chu Shen said bitterly, about 60 million spirit jades. Lu Yi silently calculated. Tang Jun, Little Dumb, Crooked Tooth, Kai Xing, Kai Yu, and Lucky Star were exactly 6 people. The money to buy their lives was really expensive. On average, it was 10 million spirit jades per person. However, it was good that they were alive. If they lost spirit jades, they could earn more. If they died, there would be nothing left. What about Ghost? She should have already become a Yu Yao at that time. Did she not participate in the battle? Lu Yi asked again. Chu Shen said, she participated in the battle. However, senior sister Ghost had just become a Yu Yao. She could not be of much use. She was constantly entangled by the other Yu Yao and could not get away. Was Pu Ku there at that time? Chu Shen shook his head. Ever since senior brother Pu Ku left that year, there has been no news of him. Lu Yi understood. Pu Ku had told him before he left. Since then, he probably had not returned. He did not know how he was doing now. Did he avoid the betrothal arranged by Ruan Tu? Speaking of which, other than the girl's temperament being a little cold, she had a good figure and good looks. Moreover, she was a Yu Yao. He did not know what Pu Ku was hiding from. How is Elder Tang now? Chu Shen asked. Elder Tang has not fully recovered from his injuries. However, he should be fine now. He will be able to recover after resting for a while. However, the incident on the Peerless Island seemed to have affected him greatly. Recently, he has been rather dispirited and listless. Big brother, do you want to go and take a look? Of course, he had to go and take a look. Although Elder Tang had not been of much use in that battle and had almost been beaten to death, his backbone was worthy of respect. Now, he finally understood the whole story behind the incident on the Peerless Island. It was somewhat similar to what he had guessed. However, Lu Yi had not expected the Minor Constellation Palace to be so powerful. Earlier, when he had set up the Minor Constellation Palace, he had deliberately controlled its power so that the speed at which it converted the 10,000 elephant seas water was maintained at a low level. He had not expected that the Peerless Island would be transformed into a top-grade spiritual island so quickly. I still have some things to ask you, Lu Yi said after deliberating for a moment. Big brother, just say it. Chu Shen looked at him seriously. Lu Yi hesitated for a moment. In the end, he could not help but ask, did I offend your mother in some way? Chu Shen was surprised. Big brother, why do you say that? He then asked, Big brother, have you met my mother? Lu Yi shook his head. He had indeed not met Jiao Yan. Since I have not met her, how could I have offended her? Moreover, my mother said just now that Big brother is a person of integrity and is someone worth befriending. Lu Yi was curious. Your mother said that? Absolutely. That was strange. If Jiao Yan felt that he was someone worth befriending, then why did she make things difficult for him just now? No matter what, he was a guest. Even if she did not treat him with respect, there was no need to do so. However, he could not ask Jiao Yan anything in person. Big brother, did my mother say something to you through voice transmission? Chu Shen misunderstood and hurriedly asked. No, Senior Jiao Yan did not say anything to me. Chu Shen looked at him suspiciously. He did not know if he believed him. He did not understand this matter. Lu Yi was certain that Jiao Yan had done something to him just now. In the world of car bells, other than her, no one else had this ability. Also, Lu Yi spoke again. Is Bansi from your world of car bells? No. Chu Shen was stunned. He did not know why Lu Yi kept asking such strange questions today. Are car bells? Chapter 1623. Ever since Half Ci left in the secret domain, not to mention Chu Shen, Li had not seen her again. It was as if she had disappeared into thin air. What happened that time was an accident, and there was nothing they could do. Because the two of them were affected by the Heaven Desire demon spider, Half Ci wanted to lure it out, so they could only use that method. Otherwise, whether it was her or Lu Yi, they would have died in the secret domain. The result was not bad. The Heaven Desire demon spider did appear and was killed by her and Lu Yi. Before that, Lu Yi did not have much interaction with her, and they were not even familiar with each other. This woman was really free and easy, Lu Yi thought to himself. If a woman could be so free and easy, he naturally would not entangle himself with her. So although he had not seen Half Ci since then, he did not think of inquiring about her whereabouts. Strangers meeting by chance forget about each other. The reason why he asked at this time was mainly because he found a person in the carriage bell domain. When he was brought over by Aunt Yu, he saw the figure of a little girl about 10 years old in the valley. At that time, he only felt that she was a little familiar, and vaguely felt that he had seen her somewhere before, but did not think too much about it. But just now, a light flashed in his mind. He vaguely felt that the little girl's face was similar to the little girl he and Half Ci saved in that domain. Back then, when he and Half Ci passed through that domain, all the creatures in that domain had been slaughtered by the Heaven Desire demon spider. The two of them split up and Half Ci found a survivor in a cellar. That was the only survivor in the entire domain, and was later taken into a small world by Half Ci. If the little girl he saw just now was really the little girl he saved from that unknown domain, then the matter was somewhat thought-provoking. If Half Ci was not from the carriage bell domain, then why was the little girl here? Calculating the time, a few years had passed, and the little girl had probably grown up, and her appearance was indeed very similar to the little girl he saved back then. Or perhaps, Half Ci was related to the carriage bell domain, and Chushan did not know that she sent the little girl to the carriage bell domain? When I came, I saw a little girl about 10 years old. Lu Yi described the scene and the appearance of the girl at that time. When Chushan heard this, he knew who he was talking about. Big brother should be talking about Wuxia? Wuxia? Lu Yi narrowed his eyes slightly. Wuxia? It would be too much of a coincidence if this was just a coincidence. She was a disciple that Aunt Yu took in a few years ago. I don't know where Aunt Yu found her. At that time, I was still at Unparalleled Island. I only heard from Aunt Yu that Ban Xia was the child of the domain. With luck on her body, she would definitely have great achievements in the future. What's the saying about the child of a domain? Lu Yi was a little curious. Chushan sighed. I heard from Aunt Yu that Ban Xia was also a pitiful child. The domain she was born in had experienced a shocking change, and everyone in the domain had died, leaving only her alive. So Aunt Yu said that in such a situation, the luck of the entire domain would be added to one person. Even if her cultivation talent was poor, she would definitely have great opportunities in the future and her achievements would not be low. If not for this, Aunt Yu would not have taken her in as a disciple. But from the current situation, Ban Xia not only has luck on her body, her cultivation talent is also very good. Aunt Yu has high hopes for her. Lu Ye's heart trembled slightly. There was no doubt that little girl called Ban Xia was definitely the one that Half Ci took away back then. But the strange thing was, since Ban Xia was here, where had Half Ci gone? Why did Chushan say that Half Ci was not from the carriage bell domain? Big brother, you know Ban Xia? Chushan asked in puzzlement. Lu Yi had no reason to suddenly ask about Ban Xia, unless he had seen her before. I don't know her, I'm just asking. Lu Yi shook his head, stood up and said, Take me to see old Tang and the others. He could not understand the matter of Ban Xia, but it was not good to ask, so he did not think too much about it. Big brother, come with me, Chushan said, standing up and heading out. In the huge hidden flower valley, there was a beautiful place. Colorful flowers and plants vied for beauty here. Several women gathered together, plucking flowers and inserting them into their hair, adding to their beauty. Not far from them, there was a clear lake. An old man sat by the lake, fishing with a fishing rod in his hand, his expression leisurely. Suddenly, the old man's expression changed, and he turned his head to look in a certain direction. He saw Lu Yi striding over. I heard from Chushan what happened before. I thought that you were lying in bed with your life hanging by a thread. I didn't think that you would be in such a leisurely and elegant mood. Lu Yi walked to Tang Jun's side, looking him up and down. He found that Tang Jun did not seem to be seriously injured on the surface, but his aura was slightly weak. Moreover, he still had the leisure to fish here. It seemed that his injuries had recovered well recently. The old man almost died, and you still came over to gloat. Tang Jun could not help but roll his eyes. When Kai Xing, Kai Yu and the others saw Lu Yi, they ran over to greet him in surprise. Lu Ye's gaze swept over them one by one, confirming that they were all fine. Even if they were injured before, their injuries were not as serious as Tang Jun's, so they had recovered by now. Moreover, their cultivation had improved. They were all at the early stage of the constellation realm before, but now they had all advanced to the middle stage of the constellation realm. When did you come back? Tang Jun took out a chair from the storage ring, placed it beside him, and waited for Lu Yi to sit down before asking. Half a month ago. Lu Yi replied. How was the trip? Tang Jun asked again. This was what he was concerned about. Since Lu Yi had returned, it meant that he had really returned to Jade Conch and then ran back. Not bad. In Jade Conch Galaxy, our 3 realms have joined forces and sent people over. How many people from my Qing Li Dao world came? 100 people, but there were some accidents on the way and about 20 people died. In the battle with the Insect Clan and the Blood Clan outside the indefinite region, a total of more than 60 cultivators from the 3 realms had died. Only about 10 cultivators from the 9 states had died, and the rest were from the other 2 realms. The corner of Tang Jun's eyes twitched. He was obviously distressed, but he also knew that it was normal for accidents to happen on such a long starry sky journey. Only 20 people died out of more than 100 people, which was a very good result. Wuxia is a little conservative. Tang Jun sighed. Given the 10,000 Elephant Sea's reputation, it was rare for them to encounter such an opportunity, but they actually only sent 100 people. This was somewhat inconsistent with Wuxia's temperament. Tang Jun was afraid that Wuxia wouldn't believe Lu Yi, so he specially gave Lu Yi a jade slip to bring back. It has nothing to do with Wuxia. I think he wants to send more people over, but there are only 100 people in Jade Conch Galaxy, so he probably can't send more. Jade Conch had only sent 100 people, but that was out of caution. After all, none of them were in the 10,000 Elephant Sea. All the information they received was from Wuxia and Lu Yi, so they didn't dare to believe it until they saw it with their own eyes. Jade Conch Galaxy only sent 100 people, so the Qing Li Dao world naturally could not outnumber Jade Conch Galaxy. On the other hand, the 9 states had no qualms and sent 300 people directly. The fishing rod sank slightly, and it was obvious that a fish had taken the bait. Tang Jun was not in the mood to raise the rod. Instead, he sighed heavily. I am sorry that I could not protect Wushuang Island. He knew about the situation of Wushuang Island. Although Chu Shen was the manager on the surface, half of Wushuang Island belonged to Lu Yi. When Lu Yi left, he left Wushuang Island to him, but when Lu Yi came back, Wushuang Island was gone. If Wushuang Island was still around, the cultivators of the 3 realms would have a natural place to stay. Furthermore, Wushuang Island was such a prosperous place that it was one of the best in the entire Wanxiang Sea. The cultivators of the 3 realms who rushed over from Jade Conch Galaxy could be said to have reached the sky in a single bound. In the future, they would not have to worry about cultivation resources. As long as they cultivated diligently, their cultivation would continue to improve and strengthen the power of their respective domains. However, Wushuang Island had changed owners, and even its name was changed. What future could they talk about? After being in the Wanxiang Sea for so many years, Tang Jun was considered a wily old fox. Naturally, he knew how difficult it was for ordinary cultivators to gain a foothold in the Wanxiang Sea. Even if the cultivators of the 3 realms joined forces this time, they were not strong enough to fight against Yu Yao. Their future days would not be easy. What was the point of occupying a deserted island if they could not take down a spiritual island? Could it be that with so many people in the 3 realms, they could only do menial tasks for others to earn spiritual jades? Thinking of this, he was glad that only 100 people came from his own domain. Wushuang Island is gone, so be it. As long as we are alive, Lu Yi said. Tang Jun looked surprised. You don't blame me for not doing well in the battle? Lu Yi said curiously, their fists are bigger. You're using an egg to hit a rock. It's good enough that you're still alive. Do you want to beat them all away? That's not realistic. Moreover, Lu Yi was not even present during the great battle. He did not even contribute a bit of his strength. How could he blame someone who had contributed so much and almost lost his life? Tang Jun stared deeply at him. After a long while he laughed. I'm old. I've really become muddle-headed. I'm not as clear-sighted as a youngster like you. I hate you. Lu Yi said, What do you hate? Tang Jun said bitterly, If I'd known that you would think like this, I wouldn't have resisted so fiercely. In the end, not only was my resistance useless, I even caused the island master to lose all his profits over the years. If he had not fought to the death earlier, the invading enemies would not have wanted to kill him. Then Chu Shun would not have used spiritual jades to buy their lives later. In this way, even if Wushuang Island was lost, he could at least keep his 60 million spiritual jades. That was 60 million spiritual jades. Tang Jun had never seen so many spiritual jades in his life. During this period of time, every time he thought about how he had lost so many spiritual jades because of his stubbornness, his heart bled. Lu Yi raised his hand and patted him on the shoulder. Everything is possible as long as you're alive. You can earn more spiritual jades if you lose them. When you're old, you should be more peaceful. Only then can you live a few more years. Don't always think about useless things and shorten your life. Tang Jun immediately blew his beard and glared at him. Don't talk to me like an old man lecturing his son. I'm old enough to be your ancestor. You're so rude. Although he said this, Tang Jun's melancholy expression was obviously much more relieved. Chapter 1624. Now that unparalleled island was lost, Tang Jun found it hard to face Lu Yi. Now that he saw that Lu Yi did not seem to care about the loss of unparalleled island, he was relieved. He was secretly shocked. Li Taibai's temperament was truly impressive. That was a top-grade spiritual island that even Ri Zhao was tempted by. Yet it was forcefully taken over by someone else. Li Taibai didn't seem to feel any heartache at all. This wasn't something that a young man like him could have. In comparison, this old man was more like a rash and impatient brat. Lu Yi stood up and stretched. Then he said, Then let's go? You can't be thinking of spending the rest of your life here, right? The Che-Ling realm also wouldn't let them stay here forever. This time, they could come to the Che-Ling realm to recuperate. It was all thanks to Chu Shen. Now that Tang Jun and the others' injuries were almost healed, even if Lu Yi didn't come, they wouldn't stay here for long. Tang Jun kept his fishing rod and patted his butt. Let's go. Chu Shen urged him to stay. Big brother, do you want to stay here for a while? I haven't prepared a welcome dinner for you yet. It was rare for his big brother to come. How could he not show some appreciation? Lu Yi shook his head. There are hundreds of people from the 3 realms waiting at the 10,000 Elephant Sea. I have to go back and take care of them. I will come again in the future. Hearing this, Chu Shen did not insist. He nodded and said, Then big brother must come often. I will send you all off. After a while, a few figures shot into the sky and flew out of the realm. Outside the Che-Ling realm, Chu Shen paused, his expression somewhat reluctant. Big brother, I'll send you off to this point. Lu Yi looked at him. Cultivate well, we'll meet again sooner or later. Chu Shen clenched his fists. He looked determined. Big brother, don't worry. I will cultivate well. Whatever we lost this time, I will take it back personally and return it to big brother. In the past, he was proud of his talent and had Jiao Yen as his backing. Therefore, he only wanted to be free. Otherwise, he would not have run away from home so many times. But after the incident at Unparalleled Island, Chu Shen understood that even if his mother was Ri Guang, backing would never be as good as his own fist. After leaving Wushuang Island and returning to Che-Ling Jie, he had a desire to become stronger that he had never had before. Lu Yi patted Chu Shen's shoulder and said, There are some things that you don't have to be stubborn about. You just have to be yourself. There's a saying. He muttered to himself for a while, then turned to look in the direction of the Wanxiang Sea and said, Sit and watch him build a skyscraper. Watch him entertain guests. Watch him collapse. Chu Shen was slightly confused. Lu Yi did not explain. He just said, Unparalleled Island being in your hands and in other people's hands might not be the same thing. Of course, we'll remember this grudge. If there's a chance in the future, we'll get our revenge. If Unparalleled Island was lost, then so be it. Outsiders only thought that it was a top-notch spiritual island, but only Lu Yi knew the real situation. As long as he took away the minor constellation hall that was placed under Unparalleled Island, it wouldn't be long before Unparalleled Island returned to its original state. After all, fundamentally speaking, Unparalleled Island was just a deserted island, not a true spiritual island. Without the minor constellation palace's ability to reverse the seawater's flow, it shouldn't be able to last for long. However, Lu Yi could not ignore the profits of Unparalleled Island in the past few years. After all, it was 60 million spiritual jades, and he wanted half of it. Lu Yi and the others left. Chu Shen stood in place and watched them leave. Only when they disappeared from his sight did he harden his heart and return to Che Ling realm. He had to become stronger as soon as possible. He did not want to experience the humiliation and helplessness from before again. In the starry sky, the planetary boat moved forward. Lu Yi looked at the girls and asked, "Junior sisters, what are your plans for the future?" When he was disguised as Fa Wuzuan, these girls had interacted with him before. They had fought alongside him in the minor constellation hall. After the minor constellation hall closed, Chu Shen found them and formed a small team with them, advancing and retreating together. Now that Chu Shen was staying in Che Ling realm to cultivate, they could not stay here. They could only leave with Lu Yi. Therefore, Lu Yi had to ask them about their plans. If they were willing to continue following him, Lu Yi naturally did not mind keeping them. During the battle on Unparalleled Island, they had already proven their bravery and loyalty. Of course, if they had other ideas, Lu Yi would not stop them. The girls looked at each other. Obviously, they had already made a decision. Saixing said, "We want to follow Senior Fellow Apprentice. I hope Senior Fellow Apprentice will not abandon us and take us in." Although they had all reached the middle stage of constellation, they all came from some small realms. With such cultivation and background, they were not competitive in the Vientiane Sea. Even if they were beautiful, they were not very attractive in the eyes of real practitioners. If Chu Shen had not found them and integrated them into a team, and they had enjoyed a few years of happiness on Unparalleled Island, they would not have reached the middle stage of constellation so quickly. Now Unparalleled Island was gone, and Chu Shen stayed in Che Ling realm. Except for relying on Lu Yi, they really had no other place to go. They could not wander on the Vientiane Sea. And they were not stupid. In recent years, through some clues, especially Chu Shen's attitude and address to Lu Yi, these girls faintly realized that Lu Yi might be Fa Wuzuan in the past. They admired Fa Wuzuan very much. That was the reason to follow him. Maybe there was an exception. Xiao Dai might not be able to realize that Lu Yi was Fa Wuzuan. She always looked silly. Lu Yi said, "In that case, you can follow me from now on." Anyway, there were hundreds of practitioners in the three realms. It would not make a difference if they joined. Moreover, they were familiar with Old Tang. When the time came, they should not be too unfamiliar with the practitioners of the three realms. Moreover, the cultivators of the three dimensions had just arrived here, so Kai Xing and the others were undoubtedly more familiar with the myriad ocean. So, with their assistance, it would be able to allow the cultivators of the three dimensions to quickly assimilate into the myriad ocean. After all, Old Tang was Yu Yao. He could not worry about everything. While they were talking, a flowing light suddenly swept out from the side and hit the star boat directly. Lu Yi felt a familiar aura. He frowned and looked in that direction. He did not know what the hell this woman was doing. The flowing light quickly approached. Just as it was about to crash into Lu Ye's arms, Lu Yi dodged to the side and chopped down with his palm. A trace of anger flashed through the woman's eyes. She clearly showed that she was seriously injured, but in the end, Li Taibai didn't know how to take care of the fairer sex. Instead, he took the opportunity to deal a heavy blow to her. She almost couldn't help but fight back. Fortunately, she forced herself to suppress the thought in her mind at the critical moment and let Lu Ye's palm chop her waist. A miserable cry rang out. There was another person on the starboat. He was still vomiting blood. Crooked Teeth Chow was shocked. "Senior Marshal Sister Ghost, what happened to you?" He quickly bent down to help her up. Ghost lay in Crooked Teeth Chow's arms with a pale face. Her soft majesty was slightly distorted by her head. She vomited another mouthful of blood and looked at Lu Yi pitifully. I can't hold on any longer. Lu Yi looked at her with rapt attention and frowned secretly. Lu Yi was certain that Ghost's injuries were fake because there was no reason for things to be so coincidental. They had just come out of the carriage bell realm when they met her. However, no matter how Lu Yi looked, he could not see any traces of her disguise. This injury was just like a real one. And what did this woman want to do? He said faintly, "There is a desolate star over there. I will help you dig a grave there. Is there any valuable inheritance? You can take it out first so that it won't be wasted." Dumbo and others were dumbfounded. Ghost only felt that Li Taibai was simply heartless. He was really the most vicious person in the world. She suppressed her anger and gasped, "I have nothing on me. I am innocent. Li Taibai, after I die, help me pass a message to Bai Lu. Tell her that I can't go to see her anymore." Hearing her mention Bai Lu, Lu Yi suddenly realized that she was waiting for her here. Bai Lu and she were really good sisters who went through life and death together. If she died, how could Bai Lu have a good end? She would definitely be buried with her. Before, Ghost asked Lu Yi to send her to the mermaid territory. Lu Yi ignored her and then Ghost left. Lu Yi was a little surprised at that time. When did Ghost become so easy to talk to? Now it seemed that Ghost was not easy to talk to, but had other plans. She was obviously using this method to force Lu Yi, telling him that if she died, Bai Lu could not live alone. Lu Yi slightly lowered his eyes and squinted at Ghost. Ghost looked back with a pitiful and helpless face. The divine light in her eyes seemed to be getting dimmer and dimmer, as if it would be extinguished at any time. Crooked Teeth, who was holding her, cried. Tears fell down, and they begged Lu Yi, "Senior brother, save senior sister Ghost." The other women also looked distressed. Although they didn't have much contact with Spectre, they had worked together on Matchless Island. Now that they saw that Spectre was seriously injured and was about to die, they all felt miserable. Of course, Lu Yi knew that Ghost would not die. But thinking about it carefully, if he did not send her to the mermaid territory, she would still implicate Bai Lu if she killed herself outside. Sending her to the mermaid territory could at least guarantee her safety. "Promise me, Li Taibai. This is my last wish. Are you going to refuse even this small request?" Ghost's voice trembled, full of blood and tears. Crooked Teeth and the others did not know who Bai Lu was, but at this moment, they felt that Bai Lu must be the most important person to Ghost, and Lu Yi also knew her. They all looked at Lu Yi, hoping that he would agree. Lu Yi said indifferently, "If you want to say it yourself. I won't agree to this." Crooked Teeth and the others were very disappointed. But Ghost. Chapter 1625. Ghost broke free from Lu Ye's grasp and said angrily, "I'm a Yu Yao now. Don't touch me or I'll beat you up." It was one thing if she wasn't a match for Lu Yi when they were both constellations, but now, she was stronger than Lu Yi. How embarrassing. The two figures flew side by side to a desolate star not far away. A moment later, in a secluded place, Lu Yi took out her conch and blew it gently. Ghost stared at it without blinking, as if she was considering whether she should snatch the conch. After staying in the merfolk's territory for such a long time, she naturally knew where this conch came from. The merfolk had a heavenly conch palace, which was an extremely strange secret realm. Anyone could enter it and have a chance to obtain a conch of their own. She had entered it once before, thinking that it would be a battle test. Who would have thought that the test inside the heavenly conch palace would be a musical instrument? She was a ghost cultivator, so how could she know anything about musical instruments? She reluctantly showed off a little, but naturally, she didn't have a good result. She did obtain a conch. According to Bai Lu, it was a kind of jade spirit conch. As the name implied, it could be used like a spirit jade. However, Ghost only obtained the lowest grade jade spirit conch. When she carried it with her, it would absorb the energy of the surrounding stars and store it. When a cultivator needed it, they could refine it and use it. However, because the quality of Ghost's jade spirit conch was too low, she could only use it once every 10 days or half a month. In other words, This thing had to spend a long time absorbing the energy of the surrounding stars to display the same effect as a spirit jade. What use was that? The merfolk had high-quality jade spirit conches, which were real treasures. They could be used almost every day. In addition to the jade spirit conch, there was also the spirit crystal conch, which Yu Yao could use to cultivate. Lu Ye's conch undoubtedly came from the heavenly conch palace, and it had the ability to open the door to the heavenly conch palace. Ghost was very tempted. If she could obtain this conch, she wouldn't have to worry about Lu Ye's attitude anymore. She could go to the merfolk's territory whenever she wanted. However, on second thought, she dispelled the idea in her heart. Not to mention that she had fought with Lu Yi before and knew how strong Lu Yi was. She also knew that Lu Yi was obviously closer to the merfolk. Therefore, even if she snatched this conch, she would lose more than she gained if the merfolk didn't want to see her. The conch's voice, and a mysterious power, a door, appeared in front of her. Ghost didn't wait for Lu Yi to call out to her. She plunged into the cave with ease, looking impatient. Lu Yi. When she appeared, Lu Ye's heavenly conch palace appeared. Sure enough, not long after, Bai Lu's figure appeared before his eyes. Compared to a few years ago, she hadn't changed much. She still had the body of a human and the tail of a fish, and her beauty was beyond compare. As if she was rather excited, her fish tail swayed gently as she looked at Lu Yi with some surprise. Li Tai Bai, you're back? Before Lu Yi left the 10,000 Elephant Sea, she had specially come to greet the merfolk, so Bai Lu knew that Lu Yi would spend a lot of time on this trip, so she had been waiting. Who would have thought that she would suddenly feel a familiar fluctuation in the heavenly conch palace today? She came to take a look, and sure enough, Lu Yi had returned. Lu Yi nodded. I'm back. Ghost was unconvinced. I'm back too. Why didn't you greet me? I'm your good sister who has gone through life and death with you. Back then, when Bai Lu used a trick to link their lives together, she felt a little uncomfortable. However, after cultivating with Bai Lu and experiencing the joy of rapidly improving her strength, she didn't have any other thoughts. Otherwise, she wouldn't have taken the initiative to ask Lu Yi to send her back this time. What was so good about the 10,000 Elephant Sea? The merfolk territory was a holy land for cultivation. Here, she had people and resources, so she only needed to cultivate. Ghost felt that with this method of cultivation, she would be able to advance to sunshine sooner or later, and she didn't know how much time she would save. Bai Lu pursed her lips and smiled. Senior Sister Ghost, you're here too. Ghost looked angry. Too? Ghost said as if she was Li Tai Bai's assistant. She really didn't understand. What was so good about this man? Why did everyone in the merfolk treat him so well? Bai Lu looked at Lu Yi. Did your trip go smoothly? It was fine. Although there were some twists and turns, it wasn't a big problem. Lu Yi replied. Ghost wanted to come to see you, so I sent her off. I just returned to the 10,000 Elephant Sea. There are a lot of things to do, so I'll go back first. I'll visit another day. Although Bai Lu was reluctant, she didn't stop him. Just as she was about to say something, a voice suddenly came from the side. Fellow Taoist, don't be in such a hurry to leave. Lu Yi turned his head and saw Great Elder Yen Miao walking over. Great Elder? Lu Yi nodded. Yen Miao came in front of Lu Yi and said, Fellow Taoist, don't be in a hurry to leave. I have something to ask of you. Please speak, Great Elder. Yen Miao didn't speak directly. Instead, he glanced at Ghost. Fellow Taoist Ghost, you should go and rest. Ghost realized that what Yen Miao wanted to say might not be convenient for her to hear, but she didn't mind. Everyone had things that were inconvenient to tell others. She said goodbye to Bai Lu and turned to leave. In terms of familiarity with the Huang Snail Palace, she was even more familiar with it than Lu Yi. It had become her second home. After Ghost left, Lu Yi said, If Great Elder has something to say, there's no harm in saying it. If it's within my power, I won't refuse. Yen Miao smiled. Then I'll get straight to the point. I hope fellow Taoist can bring a few of our clansmen to the shrine. As she spoke, she glanced at Bai Lu. Clearly, she was one of those clansmen. The shrine that Yen Miao spoke of was the Constellation Hall. Lu Yi naturally knew this. However, although the Constellation Hall was located in the depths of the 10,000 Elephant Sea and wasn't too far away from the Merfolk clan, the Merfolk clan didn't know much about the Constellation Hall. Normally, they couldn't enter the Constellation Hall. They could only enter when the Constellation Hall was open. Currently, the Constellation Hall wasn't open. Only Lu Yi could open the doors to the Constellation Hall. Therefore, if they wanted to enter the shrine, they could only ask for Lu Ye's help. Before Lu Yi could ask, Yan Miao took the initiative to explain. I heard fellow Taoist ghosts say that she left her name in the shrine and was given the opportunity to enter the shrine to become a Yu Yao. It seems that there are some benefits to becoming a Yu Yao in the shrine. That's true. Lu Yi nodded. If that wasn't the case, there wouldn't be so many veteran Constellation Halls who were clearly qualified to become a Yu Yao but still chose not to do so. They were waiting for the Constellation Hall to open so that they could win a ranking and obtain a chance to become a Yu Yao in the shrine. Lu Yi had encountered a few veteran Constellation Halls like this in the past. Their strength and foundation were indeed much stronger than the average late-stage Constellation Hall cultivator. Becoming a Yu Yao was a very particular matter. During this process, they could use some treasures. However, those treasures were all extremely rare. Just like the Phoenix Sky's blue crystal, there were too many people who needed it. Therefore, as soon as it appeared, it would be snatched up by others. Many people didn't have the opportunity to obtain it even if they had the wealth. The Constellation Hall was a very good opportunity. In fact, it was even better than using ordinary treasures. Lu Yi understood. He glanced at Bai Lu. Princess, are you going to become a Yu Yao? Thinking about it, it made sense. When Lu Yi had first met Bai Lu, she was already a late-stage Constellation Hall cultivator. So many years had passed, and Yu Ling had already become a Yu Yao. How could Bai Lu still be at the same level? Logically speaking, Bai Lu could have tried to become a Yu Yao several years ago. However, it was precisely because she had heard some things about the shrine from Yu Ling that she had held back. She wanted to wait for Lu Yi to return and then borrow the power of the shrine. To Bai Lu, this was a very good opportunity. Thus, she didn't mind waiting for a few more years. Great Elder Yan Miao said, aside from the princess, there are 2 other clansmen who are qualified to become a Yu Yao. No problem. Lu Yi immediately agreed. However, to be safe, he still explained, Great Elder, the shrine that Yu Ling entered was actually only a projection of the shrine. I don't know what kind of mysterious power it possesses that can help a Constellation Hall become a Yu Yao. I also don't know if the shrine itself has such a mysterious power. Thus, sending the princess and the others over is not a problem. However, whether this matter will succeed or not remains to be seen. I have also thought about this. However, since this is an opportunity, we can't miss it. Naturally, it would be best if it succeeds. Even if it doesn't, we won't lose anything. This was not wrong. In any case, they wouldn't lose anything. There was no harm in giving it a try. If it worked, when the Yu clan's constellation became a Yu Yao, they would have a good place to go. Lu Yi also wanted to know the result. After all, there were so many constellations in the 9 states. Sooner or later, Yu Yao would have to become a Yu Yao. As for himself, in the past, he had also thought about becoming a Yu Yao in the Constellation Hall. However, after understanding some of the mysteries of this process, he knew that it didn't matter whether he had the help of the Constellation Hall or not. He could become a Yu Yao anywhere. He didn't need to rely on the Constellation Hall. Great Elder, can you provide us with a vessel? Lu Yi asked. Yan Miao asked, what kind of vessel? Lu Yi took out his conch and explained. Although this conch can open the door to the Tian Luo Temple, it has many limitations. This door can't be maintained for too long. When the time comes, it will dissipate. Or when I go back through the door will dissipate regardless of whether the time limit is up. Therefore, this little bit of time is not enough for me to take you to the temple and come back. Yan Miao instantly understood. The journey to the temple would take at least half a day, and it would take a long time. Chapter 1626. Yan Miao asked doubtfully, if that's the case, doesn't that mean you'll never be able to go to the temple? Unless Lu Yi didn't plan on going back through the portal. Lu Yi said, In addition to this restriction, my conch has another function, which is to leave an imprint in a certain place. This way, the portal you open will lead to the place where the imprint was left, and not to the front of the heavenly conch hall. Lu Yi had already tried this before. Previously, he left an imprint in the constellation hall, so the portal led to the constellation hall. If he didn't leave an imprint, the portal would lead to this place. The imprint had a time limit, but this time limit was relatively long, at least several months. Moreover, the imprint could be removed with the conch. Last time, before leaving the constellation hall, he used his conch to remove the imprint so that it would be easier for him to go to the merfolk territory. Yen Miao understood. So, fellow Taoist wants to find a carrier and leave an imprint. Once we bring the carrier to the temple, you can open the portal and open the temple. Exactly. Lu Yi nodded. He had previously considered what to do if he wanted to go to the constellation hall in the future. Because of the time limit of the conch portal, he could only go to one place between the merfolk territory and the constellation hall. However, if he used an object that could carry an imprint, he could go to the constellation hall. Yen Miao thought for a moment, then took out an object from his storage ring. Do you think this will work? It looked like a jade tablet about the size of a table, but how could the thing Yen Miao took out be an ordinary jade tablet? This thing didn't look special, but as soon as it appeared, the surrounding temperature plummeted, and it was obviously cold. He wondered where Yen Miao found this thing. Whether it works or not, I'll have to give it a try. Lu Yi took her conch and poured her spirit power into it. Then she placed it on the cold jade board. Like a stamp, a conch pattern immediately appeared on the smooth cold jade board, but it quickly disappeared. Yen Miao looked disappointed, thinking it wouldn't work. However, in Lu Ye's perception, although the conch imprint disappeared, it still existed, but the imprint seemed to show signs of dissipating. This was different from when he left his imprint in the constellation hall. When he left his imprint in the constellation hall, there were no such signs. From the looks of it, different materials used to carry the conch mark would have different durations. This cold jade plate was clearly not an ordinary item. It must be some kind of treasure, and it must have some effect on the conch mark left on it. He silently estimated the rate at which the conch mark was dissipating. At this rate, it shouldn't be a problem to maintain it for a period of time. This item is feasible. Lu Yi said, to be on the safe side, Great Elder shouldn't put this item into your storage ring. Also, after I use this conch once, I can only use it again 7 days later. So, Great Elder, please wait for me outside the temple in 7 days. I understand. I'll bring them to the temple in 7 days. Yen Miao agreed. After everything was settled, Lu Yi went through the portal and returned to the desolate planet. When he appeared, the portal disappeared. Lu Yi summoned the star boat and headed towards the 10,000 Phenomena Sea. He had just returned to the island, so he had no idea what had happened to the matchless island. Now that he had learned the whole story from Chu Shen, it was only natural that he wanted to retrieve the minor constellation palace. That thing was the real foundation of Wushuang Island. Tianyin Island only took it as a top spiritual island and was very happy. However, he didn't know how Tianyin Island's cultivators would feel after he took back the minor constellation hall and Wushuang Island fell silent again. Old Tang and the others had already set off, so he didn't have to worry about not being able to contact the people of the 3 realms. Some people from the Qingli Dao world also came, including Tang Xiaoya. It was easy for old Tang to contact her. He rushed all the way and finally returned to the Wanxiang Sea after a few days. He continued to fly forward leisurely until he arrived at a deserted island. This place was relatively remote and there weren't many cultivators coming and going. Lu Yi waited for a while and found a time when no one was paying attention. He first condensed a doppelganger to guard this place, while his original body plunged into the Wanxiang Sea. The power of the talent tree was activated. The huge and surging energy in the sea eroded his body uncontrollably. The burning leaves of the talent tree became brighter and clouds of gray fog rose continuously. He hadn't entered the Wanxiang Sea for a long time. However, after returning this time, he had to cultivate for a period of time and raise his foundation to the peak of the constellation realm. Although he was now at the late stage of the constellation realm, there was still a gap between him and the peak. With the insight spiritual tattoo, Lu Yi could vaguely see things even in the deep sea as long as the distance wasn't too far. After a full 2 hours, Lu Yi arrived at the bottom of Wushuang Island. This couldn't be helped. In the past, Wushuang Island was desolate and there weren't many people around. Lu Yi only needed to find a place to enter the sea and didn't have to worry about being discovered. However, he couldn't do so now. Wushuang Island was at the peak of popularity. The place he chose to enter the sea was still far from Wushuang Island. He found the place where he had placed the minor constellation hall back then. The minor constellation hall was still there. No one dared to go deep into the Wanxiang Sea. In such a shallow sea, only spirit fish like Bai Ling would appear. Other than Bai Ling, the other star beasts in the Wanxiang Sea were basically active in the deep sea. Therefore, until now, cultivators had never known that there were many precious spirit fish and star beasts in the Wanxiang Sea. Everyone thought that Bai Ling was the only one in the Wanxiang Sea. Lu Yi reached out and grabbed the minor constellation hall. Then, he returned the way he came without looking back. Another 2 hours later, under the supervision of his doppelganger, his original body returned from the sea. Less than half a day later, Lu Yi obtained contact with the cultivators of the 3 realms and hurried over to meet them. Soon, he arrived on a deserted island. Tang Jun had already arrived with a few female cultivators. However, there were not many cultivators left on the island. Out of the nearly 300 cultivators, only 50 remained. The rest were nowhere to be seen. Coming from a remote place like the 9 prefectures to a place like the Wanxiang Sea, the cultivators of the 9 prefectures were like country bumpkins who had entered a city. Everything was new to them. Before Lu Yi left, he had instructed everyone to familiarize themselves with the Wanxiang Sea. Therefore, they had all formed their own groups to explore the place. Those who stayed behind were all experienced and prudent people, such as the sect master and the others. When they saw Lu Yi return, the group immediately gathered around him as if they had found their backbone. To be honest, when Lu Yi was not around, they were not confident. Only after coming here did they realize how weak their own galaxy was. On the Wanxiang Sea, the overall strength of the Jade constellation was far from the average, even if it was not at the bottom. Fortunately, they still had Lan Xiao and Yu Yao. She could more or less give them some peace of mind. However, if they wanted to establish a foothold on the Wanxiang Sea, relying on Yu Yao alone was useless. Others had 4 or 5 Yu Yao. Including Tang Jun, they only had 2. From Tang Jun, everyone had learned about the incident on the unparalleled island. Although they were indignant that a top-grade spiritual island had been snatched away just like that, they also knew that in the cultivation world, the one with the biggest fist was the one who had the final say. The island had been snatched away because they were not strong enough. No one mentioned anything about revenge because it was unrealistic. However, everyone remembered this in their hearts. If they had the chance in the future, they would definitely get their revenge. You said your name is Li Taibai? Tang Jun immediately questioned Lu Yi. He had known Lu Yi for so many years. They had drifted outside together and depended on each other. He had thought that they would treat each other with sincerity. Who would have thought that Lu Ye's name and background were fake? It was not until this meeting with the cultivators of the 3 realms that he found out that Li Taibai was not Li Taibai, but Lu Ye. Tang Jun was very hurt. Lu Ye's expression did not change as he said, "When you're outside, you have to be careful. Li Taibai is another name of mine. You only know me as a person. What does my name have to do with anything?" Tang Jun was stunned by his words. He vaguely felt that it made sense, but there seemed to be something wrong. Some cultivators from the 9 states also had strange expressions as they stared at Lu Yi. This was because Li Taibai had appeared in the 9 states. He and Lu Ye were known as the 2 prides of the military state. Many divine sea cultivators in the Myriad Demon Ridge had high hopes for Li Taibai. They hoped that he could surpass Lu Ye. However, for some reason, Li Taibai suddenly disappeared without a trace. At that time, some divine ocean cultivators from the Wanmo Ridge wanted to find him, but they could not find any clues. In the end, they thought that Li Taibai had been killed by the Haoyan Alliance. Now, they knew that Li Taibai was Lu Ye, and Lu Ye was Li Taibai. What twin prides of the military province? They were the same person. It was unbelievable because when the title of the twin prides of the military province was spread, Lu Yi was only at the true lake stage, but he had fooled countless divine ocean cultivators from both sides. Moreover, according to the clues they obtained, the twin prides of the military province had appeared at the same time. The two of them had even worked together to kill the Zerg. They really did not understand how Lu Yi could do this. However, on second thought, the 9 states were stabilized because of him. They rose because of him, and because of him, many cultivators could come to this prosperous place with thousands of scenes. How could such a person be taken lightly? Naturally, he could do things that ordinary people could not. Wan Xiao didn't understand the twists and turns, but from the meaning of his words, she knew that Tang Jun had been deceived by Lu Yi. Smiling slightly, she changed the topic and said, "Junior Marshal Brother, do you think this island will do?" When Lu Yi set off for the Che Ling boundary, he asked Wan Xiao to bring some people to find a deserted island. He did not have any other requirements as long as it was big enough. Therefore, they found this deserted island. It was indeed big, more than 3 times bigger than the unparalleled island. This was still not the biggest deserted island, but many of the other deserted islands were occupied by cultivators. No one occupied this island, so the cultivators of the 3 realms used it as a temporary base. Yes. Lu Yi nodded. When he came here, he deliberately observed this deserted island and felt that it met his requirements. It was not good for it to be too big, and it would cost a lot to set up a defensive formation. This scale was barely acceptable. Chapter 1627. What should we do next? Wan Xiao asked again. I heard that there's a recruitment island here. There are many opportunities to earn spirit jades there. Should we send some people there? Although everyone had brought some spiritual jades with them when they set off from their respective realms, they still needed to cultivate along the way. Most of them did not have many spiritual jades left. Without spiritual jades, cultivators would not be able to cultivate. This was unacceptable. Therefore, Wan Xiao wondered if they should send some people to Laika Island to try their luck. At the very least, they had to ensure that the cultivators of the 3 realms could continue their daily cultivation. The Wanxiang Sea was a good place. It was prosperous and bustling with people. It was indeed a spectacular place. However, there was a drawback that could not be ignored. It was not easy for cultivators to obtain spirit jades. If cultivators ran out of spirit jades in the Jade Snail Galaxy, they could still search deep in the starry sky. However, in a place like the Wanxiang Sea, where could they find spirit jades? They could leave the Wanxiang Sea and search in the Wanxiang Galaxy. However, that was not the safest way. They might lose their lives before they could find any spirit jades. They had only been here for a few days, but the cultivators of the 3 realms had experienced the cruelty of this place. Those who were capable could live a comfortable life here. Those who were not could only struggle at the bottom. Every cultivator who came to the Wanxiang Sea was chasing their dreams. Some of them could make their dreams come true, while others could only leave dejectedly. Don't go to Laika Island. Lu Yi shook his head. He knew better than Wan Xiao about the situation at Zhao Lei Island. It could be said that although one could earn some spiritual jades there, it required a lot of time and effort. Moreover, many of the missions were risky. The overall strength of the cultivators of the 3 realms was already on the low side. Now, they should stick together and not be separated. He looked around and said, let's set up a formation first. Since they had occupied this deserted island, they had to declare their sovereignty. They had to set up a formation here to let others know that this deserted island had an owner. This was a very normal thing to do. Many forces that did not occupy a spirit island did this. This way, their cultivators would have a more private space to move around. Others would not come and disturb them. Otherwise, it would be a declaration of war. A deserted island without a formation was an ownerless land. Anyone could come here. Wan Xiao was slightly worried. This island isn't small, and it's just a deserted island. Wouldn't it be too wasteful to set up a formation now? The cultivators of the 3 realms did not have a lot of spirit jades to begin with. setting up the array formation would definitely require some expenditure. When the time came, everyone's spirit jades would be even more scarce. Lu Yi couldn't tell Wan Xiao the truth. He couldn't possibly tell her that this deserted island would definitely become a spiritual island in the future. He could only explain, setting up an array can save us some trouble. Otherwise, if other forces set their sights on this deserted island, there might be some conflicts. As for the cost, we can set up some simple array formations. The cost won't be too high. Wan Xiao thought for a moment and nodded. Then I'll listen to you. She turned to look at Tang Jun. What do you think, Daoist Tang? Old Tang didn't seem to care at all. Whatever Lu Yi says, I'll do it. It's never wrong to listen to him. Even though he was much older than Lu Yi, ever since he came to the 10,000 Elephant Sea, he realized that there were some places where one couldn't do well just because they were older or had a higher cultivation base. Back then, he had thought that he could easily find a decent job as a Yu Yao. Who knew that no one would take him in after wandering the 10,000 Elephant Sea for so long? In the end, if Lu Yi hadn't asked him to work on the Matchless Island, he would probably have continued to wander the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Tang Jun finally understood. Although Lu Yi was young and had a low cultivation base, he was much more capable than Tang Jun. Later on, he even figured out how to return to the Jade Conch Galaxy. He even went back personally to bring a group of people out. Tang Jun admitted that he was not as capable as Lu Yi. Without Lu Yi, he could forget about ever seeing anyone from the Jade Conch Galaxy again. Therefore, it was never wrong to follow him. Tang Jun's attitude surprised Wan Xiao. Old Tang was a Yu Yao, one of the only 2 Yu Yao in the 3 realms. Yet, he didn't seem to have any opinions of his own. However, when she thought about it carefully, she realized that her own pride and arrogance had been slowly eroded along the way. She claimed to be a late-stage Yu Yao, one of the strongest cultivators in the entire Jade Conch Galaxy. However, apart from her cultivation base, she didn't seem to have much to show in this place. She had wanted to take care of the cultivators of the 3 realms, but in the end, she was the one being taken care of. If it weren't for Lu Yi, the cultivators of the 3 realms would have been wiped out in the battle against the Blood Tribe outside the Indefinite Galaxy. She, a late-stage Yu Yao, would definitely not have survived. Unknowingly, she found that she was relying on this young man. Otherwise, she wouldn't have asked for his opinion. Logically speaking, she was the strongest cultivator in the 3 realms. She could make all the decisions with a single word. Thus, the matter of setting up the formation was decided. The 3 of them each sent out a message and summoned back some cultivators who were proficient in formations. Lu Yi and the 2 Yu Yao gathered together and studied it for half a day before finally deciding on the method to set up the formation. Because they didn't have enough money on hand, they didn't have many requirements for setting up the formation this time. As long as it could cover the entire desolate island, it would be fine. As for the strength of the formation, they didn't have to worry about that for now. No one would attack a desolate island like this anyway. It wouldn't be too late to slowly improve the formation once they had more money on hand. Tang Jun had done a lot of research on formations. His attainments in the Tao of formations were much higher than Lu Yi's. After all, he had lived for so long. Lu Yi's cultivation in the Tao of formations came mostly from the 100 Formation Pagoda in the 9 provinces. He was still at the Divine Sea realm. Several years ago, Tang Jun had been in charge of setting up the formation on Peerless Island. Now that he was doing it again, he was naturally familiar with the process. On the 3 realms side, all the cultivators who dabbled in the Tao of formations were summoned back. The entire desolate island was bustling with activity. Lu Yi didn't participate. He only made a few requests and left. Although he could learn a lot from participating in setting up the formation, he had other things to do at the moment. There was no problem with setting up the formation. In the future, the cultivators of the 3 realms would have a place to stay on the 10,000 Forms Sea. However, that alone wasn't enough. They had to have a source of spirit jades so that they wouldn't have to worry about their future cultivation. However, on the 10,000 Forms Sea, cultivators without a foundation who wanted to earn spirit jades could only go to Laika Island. Lu Yi didn't go to Laika Island. Instead, he went to Peerless Island, which was now Tianyan Island. However, before that, Lu Yi saw an opportunity. He entered the 10,000 Form Sea and set up the minor constellation hall below the desolate island. With the experience of turning Peerless Island into a spiritual island, Lu Yi had a rough understanding of the minor constellation hall's power. Therefore, he only set up the place this time and didn't adjust the power of the minor constellation hall. This was because the desolate island occupied by the cultivators of the three realms was 3 times larger than Peerless Island. Thus, even if the power of the minor constellation hall was the same, the transformation speed of the desolate island was much slower than Peerless Island. It wasn't good to transform it too quickly. He didn't want to attract the attention of others and cause great waves. If he took his time, the cultivators of the three realms would have more time to familiarize themselves with the 10,000 Form Sea. In the future, if there was a need, he could adjust the power of the minor constellation hall and make it stronger or weaker. After setting up the minor constellation hall and determining that it was hidden under the desolate island and wouldn't be touched by fish, Lu Yi went to Sky Spill Island. Compared to the last time he came, Sky Spill Island's popularity had increased. It was even more lively than the last time he came. Lu Yi followed his memories and arrived in front of a shop. He looked up and frowned. This was because the signboard of the shop had changed. It was no longer the Good Pill shop. Lu Yi walked in and found that it was actually a shop that sold magic tools. Without a doubt, Hua Qianying's shop had been taken back by Sky Spill Island and she had left. Lu Yi took out a sound talisman and tried to contact her, but he couldn't. After thinking for a moment, he left Sky Spill Island and flew in the direction of the Island of Versatility. Hua Qianying had set up a stall on the Island of Versatility to sell pills. Now that she had left Sky Spill Island, it was very likely that she had returned to the Island of Versatility. Lu Yi rushed to the Island of Versatility and went straight to the Island of Versatility. At the same time, he used a sound talisman to contact Hua Qianying again. However, he still didn't find anything. He also couldn't find Hua Qianying in the Island of Versatility. This inevitably disappointed him. The reason why Lu Yi had recruited Hua Qianying from the Island of Versatility to the Island of Versatility was because of her alchemy skills. He wanted to form a good relationship with her so that when he brought his second senior sister and Hua Ci to the Island of Versatility one day, he could ask her for advice. Now that his second senior sister and Hua Ci had come, Hua Qianying was nowhere to be seen. If he had known this would happen, he would have mentioned this to Hua Qianying when he saw her a few days ago. However, at that time, Lu Yi was worried about the incident on the Island of Versatility and didn't have any other thoughts. He also didn't expect that in less than half a month, Hua Qianying would disappear. In the vast Island of Versatility, it was fine if he could contact the sound talisman, but if he couldn't, it would be very difficult to find someone. However, since he was already here, he couldn't return empty-handed. Lu Yi went to the Myriad Elephant Chamber of Commerce again and bought some things. He still had some spirit jades on hand. When he left the Island of Versatility, he still had 2 million spirit jades left. Last time, he had also received a few 100,000 spirit jades from Wuxia. He still had about 1 million spirit crystals, which he had obtained from the mermaid clan and hadn't used yet. Spending a few 100,000 spirit jades wasn't a big deal to Lu Yi. When he returned to the Island of Versatility, Lu Yi found that the array here was basically set up. It was no different from what he had requested. Obviously, Lao Tang had strictly followed his instructions. Wuxia was also there, talking to Luan Xiao and Tang Jun. The two Luan Xiao were extremely respectful. Seeing that Lu Yi had returned, Wuxia smiled slightly. "Young friend." "Elder Luo." Lu Yi stepped forward and bowed. "You came back just in time. I'm leaving, so I came to say goodbye." Wuxia couldn't stay in the Island of Versatility for long. He had wandered around for a few days and enjoyed the supreme scenery here. Now that the time limit was up, he had to leave even if he didn't want to. If he forced himself to stay, he would only be besieged by the local sun. Chapter 1628. Although Wuxia was Rizhao, he could feel the difference between him and the other Rizhao cultivators. If he really got into a fight with the Wanxiang Galaxy, he wouldn't have a good ending. "Then I wish Elder Luo a safe journey," Lu Yi said. He was Rizhao, so he wouldn't encounter any problems on the way unless he decided to use the reincarnation tree's clone to pass through the Mist Dragon. Wuxia smiled. Thank you for your kind words. After hesitating for a while, he couldn't help but say, if you encounter any problems later, remember to look for Zhang Tingyi and Kong Cheng. They won't sit by and do nothing. This time, late-stage moon jade cultivators from the Four Directions galaxy came. Kong Cheng came from the Indefinite Galaxy, while Zhang Tingyi came from the Daluo Galaxy. Lu Yi had chatted with him before, but he wasn't too familiar with him. But just as Wuxia said, if Lu Yi encountered any problems and looked for them, they wouldn't leave him alone. The kindness of saving the world was not far away. Even the Rizhao cultivators said that they would never forget it. Wuxia saw that the situation here was a little bleak, so he specially reminded them. Although the Four Directions galaxy's situation was similar to Lu Ye's for the time being, they didn't have a suitable place to stay. But the Four Directions galaxy's overall strength was strong. The four late-stage Moon Jade Realm cultivators were all late-stage Constellation Realm cultivators. Now that they had obtained many kindred spirit connection array discs, Kong Cheng and the others had been wandering around the myriad manifestations sea for the past few days, looking for suitable targets. Once they found one, they would attack the island. Then, occupying a spiritual island wouldn't be a big problem. If it weren't for the fact that there were too many people from the Four Directions galaxy, Wuxia would even ask Lu Yi and the others to join them. But there were 1,000 people from the Four Directions galaxy this time. Even if they occupied a spiritual island, they might not be able to find a place to stay, let alone Lu Yi and the others. It wasn't that they couldn't find a place to stay, but that there was a limit to the number of places a cultivator could cultivate on a spiritual island. The lower the quality of the spiritual island, the fewer places there would be. If they exceeded the quota, the efficiency of cultivating on the island would decrease. If they wanted to settle the 1,000 cultivators from the Four Directions galaxy, a low-quality spiritual island was definitely not enough. They had to at least conquer a mid-quality spiritual island. But mid-quality spiritual islands had powerful forces behind them. So Four Directions galaxy had to find a good target. It's not a big problem for now. If there are any difficulties, I won't be polite with them. Lu Yi nodded. That'll do. I'll be taking my leave. After Wuxia said those words, he soared into the sky and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Even if he didn't want to be free and easy, he couldn't just stay here and not leave after a while. Tang Jun came back to his senses and said, Kid, now that the formation is set up, it's completely according to your request. However, the defensive strength of this thing is as weak as paper. Because the cost was very low, and the area covered by the formation was very large, the defensive power was indeed not worth mentioning. Any few constellations would be able to break through it with a flurry of attacks. Also, why do you want this array formation to have an isolation effect? Tang Jun was a little suspicious. If the array formation had an isolation effect, then it could isolate the flow of energy inside and outside. But how could there be any energy flowing in from outside the Wanxiang Sea? As for isolating the internal energy from leaking out, it was even more of a joke. Such a deserted island did not have even the slightest bit of starry sky's energy. Just in case. Lu Yi replied casually. Yuan Xiao was confused. What if this deserted island comes back to life one day? Tang Jun could not help but scoff. Occasionally, deserted islands would come back to life on the Wanxiang Sea, but it usually only happened once in many years. For example, the Peerless Island was the most successful example of a deserted island that came back to life. It was now a top-grade spiritual island. However, there was only one Peerless Island in this world. It was simply a pipe dream for a person to encounter such a good thing twice. It did not matter because setting up the formation itself did not cost much. Then what should we do next? Yuan Xiao asked again. She realized that she was becoming less and less assertive. Thinking back to when she was in the Jade Conch sector, she was also a person who stood by her words. Now that she was in the Wanxiang Sea, she was relying on a young man who was not even a fraction of her age. The Earth Circle is finished. We should have a name. Lu Yi muttered, we're from the Jade Conch sector, so let's call it Jade Conch Island. Luan Xiao was speechless. She did not know what Lu Yi was thinking. Why would he think of a name for the deserted island? Tang Jun looked indifferent. Jade Conch Island was Jade Conch Island, it was not Qingli Island, let's call it the Three World Island. Luan Xiao suggested, the cultivators of the three worlds have established themselves here. We advance and retreat together, share honor and disgrace together. I hope that everyone will have a good future in the future. The main thing was that she felt a little guilty about calling it Jade Conch Island. Taoist Luan's suggestion is good. Let's call it the Three World Island, Tang Jun agreed. The matter of the island's name was settled. Lu Yi said, Senior Sister Luan will be the great island master of the Three World Island in the future. Old Tang, you will be the second island master. You're the third island master. Tang Jun looked at him. Lu Yi was about to say that there were more worthy candidates in this world, but on second thought, others were indeed more worthy. However, he was still the most suitable candidate. Among the people from the 9 prefectures, there were people from the Haotian Alliance and the Myriad Demons Ridge. Although their cultivation had reached such a level that they had long abandoned the division of factions, there was still such a mark left behind. No matter who became the third island master, it would be difficult to convince the masses. Only he could be the third island master without any objections. Moreover, his cultivation was indeed the highest in the 9 prefectures. Next, we'll build the foundation of the Three World Island. Lu Yi spoke and looked at Tang Jun. Old Tang, you have experience in this area. You'll be in charge. We'll follow the previous plan of the Matchless Island. Tang Jun had a strange expression. Follow the plan of the Matchless Island? The Matchless Island was built into a commercial spiritual island by Chu Shen. Only a part of it was the foundation of the island. Most of the spiritual island was a place to set up shops. Tang Jun really wanted to open Lu Ye's brain to see what he was thinking about for such a deserted island according to the previous plan of the Matchless Island. Young man, you're not really expecting this lousy island to be revived, are you? Everyone has to have dreams. What if one day you're lucky enough to realize them? Lu Yi said earnestly. Tang Jun snorted. If the Three World Island can be revived, I can even call you Grandpa. Lu Yi looked at him leisurely. He extended his hand and passed a storage ring to Tang Jun. Take the things inside. They should be useful. Tang Jun took the ring suspiciously. He scanned it with his divine perception and his expression became serious. Young man, don't worry. I've always listened to you. I'll do whatever you say. Luan Xiao looked at Tang Jun in shock. She didn't know what Lu Yi had given him to change Tang Jun's attitude so drastically. Lu Yi walked towards a place not far away. After he left, Tang Jun happily took out a few things from his storage ring. Luan Xiao fixed her eyes on them and discovered that they were actually a few magic treasures. She couldn't help but sigh. Fellow Taoist Tang, be careful. You're already so old. How can you be so shameless in front of a young man? Tang Jun said, you have a big family in the Jade Conch domain. How would you know the hardships of a small domain like ours? Back then, Lu Yi had given him a few 100,000 spiritual jade pieces to buy Dharma treasures so that he could have some money. However, after the battle on the Matchless Island, the Dharma treasures that he had spent a few 100,000 spiritual jade pieces to buy were all destroyed. Now, he had nothing but cultivation. As a spell cultivator, how could he survive without Dharma treasures? Unfortunately, he was short on money and couldn't afford to buy them. Lu Yi had obviously learned about this from Chu Shen, which was why he had given him these Dharma treasures. These Dharma treasures came from Wuxia. On the way to the 10,000 Elephant Sea, Wuxia had bought some kindred spirit connection formation discs from Lu Yi and paid a few 100,000 spiritual jade pieces and these Dharma treasures. Lu Yi had planned to sell them to Tang Jun, but after learning that all his Dharma treasures had been destroyed, he gave them to him. These Dharma treasures weren't of high grades. They were things that Wuxia didn't use and didn't care for. However, they were perfect for Tang Jun. Lu Yi was about to find Hua Si and second senior sister when he was stopped by Wu Chang, Yu Ji, and the others. What's the matter? Lu Yi asked. The few of them looked at each other. Their gazes were flying, but no one said a word. It wasn't until Jianghu drew his sword and pressed it against Wu Chang's waist that Wu Chang said, "Yi, I heard that you can fish on the 10,000 Elephant Sea. One fish can be sold for several thousand spiritual jade pieces. Is that true?" Not only was Luan Xiao worried about the future of the spiritual jade cultivation of the cultivators of the three realms, but they themselves were also worried. Although the Four Directions Galaxy had given Lu Yi 10 million spiritual jade pieces as a thank you gift to the cultivators of the 9 states, and each of them had received several thousand spiritual jade pieces, so there was no need to worry about their cultivation in the short term. However, they couldn't just sit around and eat. Moreover, cultivators didn't just spend spiritual jade on cultivation. Ever since they came to the 10,000 Elephant Sea, they discovered that there were many good things here. They wanted to buy all of them, but they couldn't afford anything. Naturally, they wanted to find a way to make money. They didn't know why, but when they heard about fishing, they were immediately tempted. Lu Yi frowned. He had only told the people of the Four Directions Galaxy about fishing in the 10,000 Elephant Sea. He had never mentioned it to the cultivators of the 9 states, so he didn't know how they heard about it. When Wu Chang asked, he could only nod. "That's right." "Then Wu Chang's face lit up. "You can't go." Lu Yi immediately stopped Wu Chang from getting tempted. There's too much luck involved in this matter. Many people have lost their family fortunes because of it. Those who benefit from it are only a small part of it, and it's only a very small part. Fishing could ruin one's life, and playing with fish for 3 generations wasn't just a saying. It was the conclusion of countless ancestors' tragic endings. Just like gambling? Wu Chang didn't understand. It's not the same. In any case, this matter isn't reliable. No matter what you've heard from others, don't get involved in this matter. Otherwise, it'll be too late to regret it. They all nodded. Lu Yi didn't know if they listened to him or not. Lu Yi saw that this wouldn't do. If Wu Chang and the others were so interested in fishing after hearing about this matter, the others would probably be the same. Especially now that the cultivators of the 3 realms didn't have any spiritual jade income, there might be people who would take the risk out of desperation. He had to get Luan Xiao to pass down the order that the cultivators of the 3 realms island were strictly prohibited from fishing in the future. He had to nip this idea in the bud. Chapter 1629. Since coming to the Wanxiang Sea, most people had gone on a trip together. Although they did not gain much, it was always good to broaden their horizons. There were a small number of people who did not leave this deserted island. Xueyuan and Hua Xi had been staying here all this time. When Lu Yi walked over, the 2 girls were gathered together and talking about something. Hupo was lazily lying on the side. Ye sat beside Hupo, her hands supporting her chin. She had a thoughtful expression on her face. Dee was nowhere to be seen. She did not run out, but hid inside Hupo's body. She was a spirit after all, an existence of the same nature as the soul race. So in this place where people came and went, it was not convenient for her to appear for long. When Lu Yi came here, Li Shang also flashed out of his divine sense ocean and entered Hupo's body. He should have gone to chat with Yi. Seeing Yaya's expression, Lu Yi was a little surprised. He bent down and raised his hand to touch her head. "What's wrong?" Yaya looked up at him and pouted. "Auntie said not to let people touch my head. I won't grow up." The auntie she was talking about was undoubtedly. Lu Ye's hand stiffened, and he awkwardly withdrew it. Looking at Yaya seriously for a while, Lu Yi vaguely felt that Yaya seemed to have changed recently. Yaya was really like a child before, but now her eyes seemed to have become more lively. "What's bothering you?" Lu Yi felt that he should talk to Yaya. Yaya nodded, feeling wronged. "Do you want to tell me?" Lu Yi asked. Yaya hesitated for a moment, then said, "Daddy, I've been having some strange dreams recently." Lu Yi waited for her to continue, but Yaya did not say anything after that, so he could only ask, "What dreams?" Yaya shook her head, indicating that she could not explain it clearly, but those dreams were indeed strange and scary. She did not dare to sleep recently. Only then did Lu Yi understand why the little girl was sitting here in deep thought with a melancholy look. She was obviously traumatized. Otherwise, like before, she would easily fall asleep next to Hoopa. When did it start? Lu Ye's heart skipped a beat. Yaya said, "It was a few days ago." What was a few days ago? Lu Yi found that it was quite troublesome to communicate with children. Although Yaya was certainly not a real child, her temperament and mind were no different from a child's. Before we came here? Lu Yi asked. Yaya tilted her head and thought for a moment, then nodded, indicating that he was right. Lu Yi looked at the bracelet on her wrist. After you found this bracelet? Yaya nodded again. Lu Yi pondered for a while and vaguely realized that the bracelet found in the mist dragon should be the reason for Yaya's dreams. This thing must have originally belonged to Yaya, but it was lost in the mist dragon. The last time Yaya passed by it, she sensed it and found it again, gathering a pair. Since it was something that belonged to her, it shouldn't be bad for her. Let me have a look. Lu Yi stretched out his hand. He hadn't checked Yaya's bracelet before. Yaya then took off the 2 bracelets on her wrist and handed them to Lu Yi. Lu Yi took them and examined them carefully, but could not find anything wrong with them. He couldn't even tell if this thing was a treasure or not. For such a situation to occur, either this thing was really not a treasure, or the mystery of this thing was beyond his understanding. Lu Yi leaned toward the latter possibility. No matter what, Yaya was still sunshine, and it was normal for her to have some mysterious treasures on her. Handing the bracelet to Yaya, Lu Yi comforted her. It's just a dream. Don't be afraid, everyone dreams. Yaya looked at him innocently. Daddy's dreams are also scary? Lu Yi thought to himself that he hadn't really slept for a long time, so how could he dream? But he could only lie to a child. It's very scary, but you'll be fine when you wake up. Yaya seemed to understand. So everything in the dream is fake. Of course it's fake. Lu Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Yaya cheered as if Lu Yi had solved a big problem for her. She was so happy that she jumped up and hugged Lu Ye's face and kissed him. Lu Yi froze. Shuiyuan and Hua Si, who were talking and laughing on the side, stared at this scene in a daze. Yaya ran off to the side with Hoopa to play. Lu Yi touched his face that had been kissed and couldn't come back to his senses for a long time. Other than Hua Si, this was the second, the third, the fourth person of the opposite sex to kiss him. Even Yi had never kissed him. Hua Si said faintly, "You'd better pray that Yaya stays like this." Everyone knew that Yaya was sunshine, and for some reason she had become like this. But there was no guarantee that she would ever recover. If there really was a day when she recalled that she had always called Lu Yi daddy and kissed him like this, who knew if she would crush him to death with one hand? Lu Yi felt a lot of pressure. It seemed that he had to quickly improve his cultivation. At the very least, he had to ensure that if Yaya recovered and wanted to teach him a lesson, he had to be able to protect himself. What's the matter? Shuiyuan changed the topic. Only then did Lu Yi remember the purpose of his visit. He hurriedly handed over a storage ring. I bought some pill recipes from the Vientiane Chamber of Commerce, as well as many herbs. You can study them and see if you can refine some pills. At present, if the cultivators of the 3 realms wanted to earn money, they could only do it through alchemy, other than going to Laika Island to work as laborers. This was also the method that many alchemists chose after coming to the Vientiane Sea. As long as their alchemy skills were high enough, they could always earn some money. Take Hua Qianying for example. As long as she lowered her requirements slightly, she could join a top force. She would definitely receive good offerings and treatment. Shuiyuan and Hua Si's alchemy skills were definitely top-notch in the 9 provinces, but they were not enough on the Vientiane Sea. After all, there were many pill recipes that they had not dabbled in, and many herbs that they did not recognize. However, Li did not count on them to refine pills. He was counting on a treasure in Shuiyuan's hands. After he obtained the treasure, he gave it to Shuiyuan for safekeeping. It was a supreme treasure that could assist in alchemy. With this treasure, as long as one had the materials for alchemy and a suitable pill formula, one could naturally refine spirit pills. Moreover, the quality of the spirit pills would be extremely outstanding. This treasure could definitely become the key to earning spiritual jades for the cultivators of the 3 realms. Xueyuan took the storage ring and immediately understood Lu Ye's plan. Junior sister Hua and I will study it first. And these things you guys take them too. Lu Yi handed over another storage ring. The ring did not contain things that he had bought, but things that he had obtained from the Vientiane Sea. For example, the spirit refining grass and many types of spirit fish and star beasts. These things had been with him for a long time. Although he had eaten some spirit fish when he returned to the 9 provinces, he had stored a lot of them, so he naturally did not finish them. Especially spirit fish, which were inexhaustible in the Vientiane Sea. Others could not obtain them, but with Lu Ye's relationship with the mermaid clan, he could easily obtain them. Whether it was by ling or other spirit fish, they all had great medicinal value. If Xueyuan and Hua Xi could develop pills that used spirit fish as the main ingredient, it would be equivalent to finding a source of income for the 3 Realms Island. As for the spirit refining grass, its value was naturally high. However, Lu Yi had a lot of it and could not use it all. It was a good choice to use it for alchemy. After all, it was not good to sell the spirit refining grass in large quantities to avoid being targeted. However, if it was refined into pills, there would be no such concern. It was the same principle as the spirit fish. Even if Lu Yi knew that those spirit fish could be sold for a good price, it was not good to sell them directly. If people asked about the origin, he would not be able to explain. He could not say that he had killed them in the Vientiane Sea. After receiving many pill recipes and materials from Lu Yi, Xueyuan and Hua Xi became busy. The 2 women had nothing to do since they arrived here. They were so bored that they were about to grow mold. However, as female cultivators, especially beautiful ones with low cultivation levels, it was not good for them to go out. Now that they finally had something to do, they naturally devoted themselves to it. The 3 Realms Island was in full swing. Under Tang Jun's leadership, the construction of the island's foundation was in full swing. For cultivators, this was a very simple matter. It was nothing more than building some residences. However, compared to mortals, the residences built by cultivators were undoubtedly more durable and beautiful. There was no need to worry about materials. Lu Yi had already gone to the Vientiane Chamber of Commerce to buy some. With his previous experience on the Matchless Island, Tang Jun could be said to be very familiar with this task. The buildings were arranged reasonably under his design. In just a few days, the foundation of the 3-world island was more or less completed. The few hundred cultivators finally had a place to stay. Lu Yi put in a lot of effort and carefully supervised the entire process. The current 3 Realms Island had changed a lot compared to before. However, aside from the foundation of the island, the rest of the island was still desolate. Lu Yi had Tang Jun lead the team to continue the construction. Tang Jun was a bit surprised because in his opinion, Lu Yi was really treating this desolate island as the future base of the 3 realms. The current buildings were enough for now. If they continued to build more, it was clearly for the cultivators of the 3 realms to come in the future. However, after receiving Lu Ye's magical weapons, Tang Jun had no choice but to let Lu Yi do as he pleased. Just as Lu Yi was about to leave, a figure suddenly flew to the 3 Realms Island and stopped outside the Great Formation. When Wan Xiao saw who it was, she opened the formation and the person immediately flew in. Fellow Taoist Kong. Wan Xiao greeted. It was Kong Cheng of the Indefinite Realm. After entering the Vientiane Sea, the cultivators of the 3 realms were separated from the people of the 4 Directions Galaxy. This was the first time they had come here. Lu Yi and Tang Jun, who were talking, also walked over and exchanged greetings with Kong Cheng. Lu Yi did not know why Kong Cheng had come here. According to what he knew, the people of the 4 Directions Galaxy had been searching for suitable targets on the Vientiane Sea. However, Lu Yi soon understood why Kong Cheng had come here. Chapter 1630. Borrow people? Lu Yi was slightly taken aback, but he quickly recovered. Do you already have a target in mind? It had been more than half a month since they arrived at the 10,000 Elephant Sea. After such a long time, the 4 Directions Galaxy had obviously found a suitable target and were ready to attack. Kong Cheng nodded. Yes, that's why we're preparing to attack that spiritual island. In order to prevent a lack of manpower, we hope that you can provide us with some assistance. Of course, we won't ask for your help for nothing. Lu Yi pondered for a moment. The Three Realms cultivators and the Four Directions Galaxies cultivators had come together. Furthermore, if the Three Realms cultivators wanted to come to the 10,000 Elephant Sea in the future, they would have to pass through Wu Ding's territory. It was not a big deal for Kong Qing to come and borrow people. After thinking for a moment, Lu Yi said, "Which middle-class spiritual island are you planning to attack?" Kong Qing smiled and said, "Let's not touch the middle-grade spiritual islands for now. Although it hasn't been long, we have discovered that many spiritual islands are closely related to each other, especially those middle-grade spiritual islands. Most of them have their own allies. Before we have the confidence to secure a middle-grade spiritual island, we are prepared to test the waters with a low-grade spiritual island." If Kong Qing wanted to borrow people, he would not be borrowing constellations, but Yu Yao. Due to the rules of the 10,000 Elephant Sea, no faction could have more than 5 Yu Yao participating in the battle. The Four Directions Galaxy had 4 late-stage Yu Yao, so there was still 1 spot left. If they borrowed 1 more, they would have 5. However, with the Four Directions Galaxy's overall strength, they could easily take down a low-class spiritual island. There was no need for them to come here and borrow people. They were not borrowing people, they were giving them benefits. Kong Qing continued, "Low-class spiritual islands are not what we're after. If there's a chance in the future, we'll attack a middle-class spiritual island. When that time comes, you can take care of that low-class spiritual island." This was a great benefit. With the Three Realms cultivators' resources, it was already good enough to have a low-class spiritual island. There were so many factions on the 10,000 Elephant Sea, but how many of them had their own spiritual islands? Even the lowest class spiritual island was better than a deserted island like the Three Realms Island. This was because cultivators could save a lot of spiritual jades if they cultivated there. The Four Directions Galaxy's decision was obviously because of Lu Yi. Perhaps Wuxia had told them something before they left, or perhaps it was their own intention. Luan Xiao clearly saw this and didn't say anything. She just looked at Lu Yi, waiting for him to decide. Lu Yi pondered for a moment, then said, "Fellow Taoist Kong, I appreciate your kind intentions, but the Three Realms cannot compare to your tribe. Even if we do occupy that low-class spiritual island in the future, with our current foundation, we may not be able to defend it." Kong Qing said, "We can help." Thousand directions. However, it wasn't good to say this out loud. We were the ones who didn't think it through. Kong Qing understood what Lu Yi meant. "Still, thank you for your kind intentions. It's my duty. Without you, there would be no Four Directions Galaxy today." Senior brother Luo reminded us before he left that if the Three Realms needed any help, we must not refuse. If we need help in the future, we must remember to send a message. Kong Qing deliberately mentioned sending a message to express his attitude. In the future, the Four Directions Galaxy's cultivators would not have any contact with the Three Realms on the surface. Otherwise, the Three Realms would be implicated. Kong Qing left quickly. Lu Yi sent them off with his eyes. Although the Four Cardinal Galaxies had good intentions this time, and if he did not have the minor constellation palace, he might have been able to accept it. However, since he already had the minor constellation palace, why would he care about a mere low-grade spiritual island? It was just that he did not want to be too obvious about it. Otherwise, if he adjusted the power of the minor constellation palace slightly, he would be able to turn the Three-Realm Island into a low-grade spiritual island in less than 10 days. Kong Qing thought that Lu Yi was afraid that the Three Realms would be implicated, but he did not think so. In the future, the Three Realms Island would definitely become a living island. When that time came, it would definitely be targeted. When the Three Realms Island became a superior spiritual island, or even a top-grade spiritual island, it was hard to say who would be implicated. After exhorting Wan Xiao and Tang Jun, Lu Yi turned and walked towards his sleeping quarters. The sleeping quarters he was given were in the best area of the Three Realms Island. It was not small, but there were only 3 sleeping quarters. They belonged to the 3 island lords. Lu Ye's residence was in the middle, and his sleeping quarters were not small. All kinds of side rooms were available, not to mention him. Even if dozens of people were to live in them, it would not be a problem. He found a room and walked in. He picked up his conch and blew into it. Looking at the time, it was time to make the appointment with Miao Yen. Although he had confirmed that the conch's mark could be placed on the frost jade board, whether this method would work or not, he still needed to verify it. It would be best if it worked. That way, it would be convenient for him to go to the minor constellation hall in the future. The conch's sound rang out. The door opened, and Lu Yi walked in. When he passed through the door, Lu Yi raised his eyebrows. He was no longer in front of the familiar conch hall. Instead, he was in a vacuum. He turned around and saw the simple minor constellation hall in front of him. Miao Yen and a few other mermaids were waiting at the side. Bai Lu was among them. Aside from her and Miao Yen, there were two other mermaids, one male and one female. They were probably preparing to advance Yu Yao. At this moment, the frost jade board was placed in front of Miao Yen. The door was on the board. This vacuum wasn't Miao Yan's doing. Instead, it was the power of a golden conch. Bai Lu was holding the conch in her hand. Specks of golden light rippled from the conch, pushing away the seawater and turning the area around them into a vacuum. The mermaids were quite thoughtful. If it weren't for the conch's power, the frost jade board would have been corroded by the 10,000 elephant seas seawater. At that time, it would be hard to say whether the conch's mark Lu Yi had left on it would still exist. After everyone greeted Lu Yi, Miao Yen said, "Thank you for your trouble, young friend." Lu Yi nodded. Without wasting any time, he walked to the minor constellation hall and reached out to push the door. The other mermaids watched curiously. Before Lu Yi came, they had already tried. However, even someone as strong as Miao Yen couldn't budge the minor constellation hall's door. Right now, under their watchful eyes, Lu Yi didn't seem to be using much strength at all. He actually managed to push the door open. Miao Yan's eyes lit up. He immediately understood that Lu Yi had indeed been chosen by the minor constellation hall. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to open the doors so casually. Since that was the case, the ancestral teachings were correct. Those who were chosen by the minor constellation hall definitely had the ability to remove the curse on their mermaids. When the door was pushed open, everyone rushed in. After everyone had entered, Lu Yi walked in as well. Speaking of which, it was strange. The door was on the frost jade board. When Miao Yen walked in with the board, the door on the board followed him in as well. Lu Yi had thought that the door would remain outside. Aside from Bai Lu, this was the first time the other three mermaids had entered the minor constellation hall. Naturally, they looked around curiously. Unfortunately, there was nothing else in the minor constellation hall apart from a simple stone tablet in the center. Naturally, they couldn't see anything new. Great Elder, it's rumored that the minor constellation hall is extremely helpful in helping cultivators break through to the Yu Yao stage. However, I don't know the specifics. The princess and the others will have to figure this out themselves, Lu Yi said. Bai Lu smiled. I've already learned about it from Yu Ling naturally, I know what to do. Don't worry. Lu Yi was stunned. He had forgotten about Yu Ling. Although the minor constellation hall she had entered was only a projection, it was likely that she had some of the minor constellation hall's miraculous effects. Bai Lu had learned about the situation from her in advance, so it was naturally for the best. Miao Yen said, "Young friend, if you have something to do, you can leave. You can come back later to escort them out. I'll stay behind to protect them." Lu Yi didn't have anything to do. However, the door had a time limit, so it wasn't appropriate for him to stay behind. "Then I wish you all the best. The next time we meet, you'll already be Yu Yao." Lu Yi gave them his blessings, then set a time with Miao Yen for their next visit. Then he left through the door. He really wanted to see how the minor constellation halls would break through to the Yu Yao stage. Such a close observation was rare. He was already in the late stage of the minor constellation hall, so he would have to experience this sooner or later. There was no harm in observing and learning. By the time Lu Yi returned, only a few minutes had passed. The cultivators of the three realms hadn't even noticed his departure. The change in Peerless Island had alerted him. When he was still here, Peerless Island's foundation was actually very weak. This was because Tang Jun was the only Yu Yao there. If it weren't for Chu Shen's background, which attracted so many forces, Peerless Island would have been conquered long ago. However, Peerless Island later became a top-grade spiritual island, and Chu Shen's background was no longer of any use. Now, the Three Realms Island had 2 Yu Yao and almost 500 minor constellations. However, such a force was really nothing in the Wanxiang Sea. It would be fine if the Three Realms Island became a low-grade spiritual island in the future. However, if it became a mid-grade spiritual island, this force would be insufficient. Relying on the people from the Four Directions galaxy was unreliable. If they wanted to stir up trouble, they would definitely offend others. At the same time, relying on them would also attract the attention of their enemies. Therefore, Peerless Island still needed allies. Disregarding the minor constellations, the number of Yu Yao was still too few. However, where could they find allies in a place like this? Lu Yi thought about it, and could only think of one direction. The Mermaid clan was the most natural ally. For example, Miao Yan was close to the peak of the late-stage Yu Yao stage. She was not inferior to Luan Xiao at all. If she could help at a critical moment, then the safety of the Three Realms Island would be assured. Meanwhile, the Mermaid clan had many Yu Yao. The elders were all at the late-stage Yu Yao stage. This clan's biggest problem was that they didn't have Ri Zhao. Unfortunately, the Mermaid clan couldn't leave the Wanxiang Sea because of the curse. In the end, they couldn't be relied on. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.